Right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and it is an EPL focus show. And as my buddy Alex would say, I can't tell if we were just watched a weekend of Premier League action or League On, with five red cards kind of being the highlight of the week. So we're gonna talk. We're gonna just do a long form rundown of all the games that happened. Uh, but I'm also going to start off with basically what happened in our country, because Messi does go on to win the League's Cup. So I'll be talking a little bit about that and briefly touch on what happened in the women's final. It was Spain versus England, and Spain did go on to win with a goal 1-0 by Olga, their captain, and it was an interesting game, at least from the perspective that maybe people would have expected it to be a little more competitive on England's side. England were good throughout the most of the tournament. I mean, they did have a rough struggle, but and they were able to get Lauren James back onto the field, and it just didn't necessarily work out for them. So I'll briefly touch a little bit on that as well, and then really just kind of get started. I went a little long last week, so I don't want to do that this week. So just kind of getting started with the League's Cup. I mean, it was the final. The final was really entertaining. I mean, it started off with like Messi scoring a video game kind of goal. Set up by a circus flick by Robert Taylor, of all people, and it was a nice setup by Joseph Martinez. He played a role in this as well. And then when the ball found Messi to the top of the box, you actually heard the announcer say, "Uh oh." Because he just like kind of goes past Zimmerman. I think Zimmerman tries to get the ball. He sticks out a leg and maybe does get a little bit of the ball, but Messi's been so good at maybe losing the ball and quickly winning it back without losing his stride. Yeah, that's almost been it's basically his trademark move essentially. And then he's just able to just curl it into the upper 90. Uh, and then it looks like they were maybe going to maybe going to win this kind of comfortably, and then in the second half, Nashville did make a few changes, and it seemed like they were a little bit more. Uh, Maybe they were reserved to start the game, and then in the second half they really went out for it, and did get the tying goal, and then it looks like actually maybe the guy that kept Miami in it was their keeper. He had a couple really big saves, and then towards the very end, it looked like Miami was actually going to edge it before it even went to PKs. And I put down in the notes it reminded me a little bit of what Messi went through with Higuain. I mean that's a little harsh because players are differently, but it did remind me something that happened in Messi. What happened maybe in two Copas when Higuain had a chance to win a game kind of late. He was through on goal, and both times he just kind of missed it. And in this one, it was kind of the same thing. The Cavanier, whoever the striker was, he did well to get past the keeper, and he had the whole goal to himself, and he wasn't able to slide it in, only striking the post, and so it does go to PKs, and it was a wild PK shootout. I mean, some of the PKs were fantastic, to be honest, like a couple like really hitting to the upper 90 with some power. Um, and then, it gets all the way to the keepers, and Miami's keeper absolutely buries it. Made a statement. Maybe he actually kind of intimidated the other keeper with that kind of PK, because it was hit with like real force. And the Nashville's keeper, his shot was saved, and so Messi does go on to win. It's very similar to when Liverpool beat Chelsea in the I guess League Cup final a couple years ago, when Kelleher went all the way to the keepers as well. Kelleher was able to make his, and Kepa hit his over the bar. And so that is so. Messi did join Miami, and he did help them go on to win the League's Cup. And throughout the whole tournament, I mean, it was kind of defense versus offense here. It looked like Nashville had the best defense going into this, and Miami had the best offense as far as goals went. And yeah, I mean, it actually ended up kind of being a pretty even contest. And in fact, if it wasn't for Messi gets the wonder goal, but if it wasn't for the keeper that made a couple really big saves, maybe Nashville does go on to win this, be in the end. So Yeah, it was an entertaining game. It was fun, and then I move on to. I mean, I spoke a little bit about it last week. I'm still iffy on this. Uh, but there's no reason to downplay it now. I mean, it was good entertainment. It's in the dead of summer, so during nighttime, there's really nothing going on around here. So nothing really on TV. So at least it was good in that respect. So I'm not gonna trash it. And then we'll move on to the women's final, and Spain does go on to beat England. And the goal really comes from an England mistake, like Lucy Bronze, I believe it is. The right fullback. She runs into the middle of the field carrying the ball, and she does what you're not supposed to do when you do that. Is one, you leave in the space, and two, she lost the ball, and lost it in a crowded area. And then Spain countered directly on that side. They knew exactly where to hit, and that's immediately where they went. And another thing that happened is they had an overload, numbers advantage, and the ball is played to the overlapping runner, who has an inch perfect finish, to kiss off the bar, beating keeper Earps. And England did have a couple chances, at least in the first half. They were a little bit more competitive in the first half. A hemp, I think, hit the bar on a nice shot. But as the game went on, it really seemed like England struggled with Spain's possession. They couldn't turn them over, and Spain ran England's legs to the ground. In the second half. And even in possession, it seemed like England lacked ideas going forward. Honestly, outside of a few efforts in the first half, it didn't feel like they troubled Spain's keeper, to be honest. And so I do think in that respect it was a poor showing, unfortunately. And maybe some questionable decisions by the England coach. Took off Rachel Daly to start the second half. Took off I think Russo in the second half as well. And I thought England basically played that entire second half without a recognizable striker, to play anything with. And I thought, Toon was kind of their 10 player, and she didn't really offer a whole lot to me. And I thought it maybe would have been better to keep Daly on or Russo, and maybe try Lauren James as their 10. I mean, one thing you can maybe say is, the two subs that did come on, Chloe Kelly and Lauren James, they were two players that actually did somewhat do a better job of holding on to the ball, and at least it didn't seem like they freaked out, like having some pressure. But Spain really were a different class. I think that was kind of the real takeaway of the game, regardless of the scoreline. It really did look like one side that had been coached by Barca and Real Madrid academies, and England. Just England's the main clubs in England have started to put uh some pretty good funds into their women's program. The Women's Super League has been doing well for them, but it still seems there is a different class there. I mean, the one person to really highlight is Bonmatí on Spain. I thought she ran the show. Basically, she ran the show all tournament, but 96% accuracy. She had people dribbling. She beat people with her dribbling. She had clever cutbacks when it was needed. I think she had 7 successful dribbles, and she seemed to recognize where to hurt England whenever she got on the ball. And definitely one of the players of the tournament for me. And yeah, I do think 1-1 or 1-0 feels the right scoreline. I mean, Spain also had a PK given to them. I thought this decision was really harsh, and the England keeper did a really good job to make the save. And so yeah, I think it was in the 70th minute, and England they were still only down a goal, and I think they had 13 minutes or so, something of extra time. And again, just there was all that time still left to be played, and you really don't remember England actually forcing Spain's keeper into a big save. Um, and so I do think it was a bit of a weird play from them. And another thing that really showed up was Spain recognized they were able to basically just kind of press England's kind of back three, their three defenders, just into just any kind of if you got within 8 feet, they were just hoofing the ball upfield. And one thing that I kind of put down is I did watch the Women's Euros last year when it was on ESPN, or I guess ESPN Plus. And one thing that was on display, for that tournament was their captain, Leigh Williamson, who I think plays for Arsenal. She was much better. She was significantly better on the ball than what these three showed. So I think they missed them. Obviously, she's the captain, so they missed her in that respect as well. And so maybe it would have been different had she been able because it wasn't just England not really offering anything offensively. When they got on the they couldn't really turn Spain over. That was another thing. But when they finally did get possession, maybe on a corner kick or maybe Spain like went long and it went to the keeper. England were just going long and losing the ball again that way. So it was yeah, it was rough. It was a rough watch, at least for England's perspective. And so there you go. I mean, yeah, and it's rough for maybe the coach too. It's back-to-back finals appearances for the England's coach, Sarah Wegman, and because she was coaching the Netherlands when the U.S. beat her, and yeah, Spain are the world champions. Coach and administration turmoil and all, and I'm not going to defend the coach, but I will going to say that the coach did make maybe some big calls and right calls by basically starting Salma. Um, in the game, sitting Esther Gonzalez and basically sitting Alexia Putellas. Though that probably wasn't an easy call, and so I think he gets credit there. I think Salma did or Palomeo did this 19-year-old. She was running the channels and was just England really couldn't do anything with her when she was able to get on the ball. Uh, and yeah, I just to briefly talk on the turmoil in the federation. Um, I mean, the federation is an absolute mess, and it looks like the president of the football association um, acted inappropriately even after like in the Spain dressing room, apparently inappropriately kissing one of the players like completely unprovoked, and then like bragging about it or making jokes about it, and this was all like how found on video, and that's just yeesh. So maybe you understand a little bit why uh, there were a number of players that were protesting this coach and this federation and didn't play, opted to. It was once in a lifetime opportunity. Apparently this has been their golden generation. They've won a lot of things in their youth, in the youth at the youth level, the U20 level and whatnot. So a lot of people were expecting this. Uh, I was just kind of expecting it because I know Barcelona have been at the club level have been they made they made the Champions League final. I think they did end up losing to oh no, maybe they did beat Wolfsburg. Uh, but Barcelona is really one of the reasons why the team is as good as it's been. Barcelona and Real Madrid had a number. Basically, they probably had I want to say maybe 10 of the 11 that were on this team, and so it was. I think that was really on display, and I think to end on that, I think it's a wake up call for us. I kind of mentioned it last week, but I feel like we've seen it on the men's side, so I don't understand why eventually we wouldn't also see it on the women's side, where our over reliance on our college system to develop our youth players, I think it's inferior to European professional academy programs that exist over there. Uh, I think it was fine when we were kind of the only ones caring. I think it was fine when that is it Title 12 or Title 13 that is allowed women's sports to grow, and it was a good setup at least in that respect. But that if we don't adjust to this, it's going to I feel like it's only going to get worse, and our women's side is going to start to look a little bit like how our men's program has been doing. I mean that is a little bit of a pessimistic kind of take, but you're watching someone like Bon Mati in midfield, and Spain's entire midfield was able to just move the ball, with pressure or with not, and it just didn't. There was just a different class, watching that than compared to what we had. Um, so I know we have someone like Rose Lavelle, and I think Herrera and Ertz, or maybe comparable. Yeah, probably not, but at least probably the closest we have. But every single player I mentioned is also older. Um, well, so we need to see. We need to see. A lot of people have talked up how good we look, going forward, potentially with Smith, Alicia Thompson, and and Rodman. But it's really it's at the back. You need to be able to have center backs that are good passing the ball, and you need to have, especially if you want to play a high line, and especially if we're going to press, and we need to have midfielders that are also good at doing the same thing. And it just seems it does feel real close to having an issue there. So, anyways, there's enough about about that. I am going to get started quickly with Mancast with week two EPL review because again, I did go long last week, and there are a lot of things I want to say about a couple of these games. So we'll lead off with Man City and Newcastle. This wasn't the most exciting game. Julian Alvarez had a fantastic goal to at least win it, 1-0. And going into this, there was a big part of me that actually thought, City did play a game midweek. Sevilla made them work pretty hard, to get it to PKs. Maybe there's some celebration. Maybe with the trophy that night. Maybe Newcastle were getting them at a good time, and no, because I mean, Man City weren't really lights out. At least as a team, like going forward. Though the one player was. But they also showcased, I think, a different way to win, and there's been a number of times when like Pep has already like Man City have played like 3 or 4 games where Pep has basically used a different game plan in every single game. And this one, Phil Foden was given a creative 10 role, and man, did he show off. That's probably going to be the takeaway from this game, and I'm definitely going to talk about that. But I mean, just from the first minute, you saw him just kind of finding the gaps where Newcastle's back line and Newcastle's midfield was, and just he lived receiving the ball there and quickly turning upfield and being able to just get the ball into a danger area, moving with pace, with Holland ahead of him, and he was able to find Holland a couple times. And maybe this game actually could have ended relatively comfortably for Man City if Holland had actually had his finishing boots on, because he didn't have necessarily his best game. Though Holland did make some good runs, and the reason why Foden was able to find this space is because of those runs. Um, I mean, the interesting thing about Foden is he's like a weirdly a player that looks faster when he's sprinting with the ball than without it. Got the assist to Alvarez as well. I mean, Alvarez has a lot to do when he gets the ball from Foden. But really, it was the 3 balls on the plate he put to Holland that made me go whoa. Because that's kind of the thing I've been wondering. Like, it's where are they going to find creative play without Kevin De Bruyne? And I didn't know. I knew Foden was really good dribbling with the ball. I didn't know he had an eye for pass like this. So that is definitely something to watch for. But it wasn't just that. I mean, Akanji kind of was doing double duties. I think in midfield at times. Gvardiol was operating between like being a fullback and a center back. It seems like Kovacic offers an extra body in midfield, and I don't think he played a bad pass all game. I think after like the Arsenal game, I went a little bit after Kovacic. And in a game like this, you see what he really does have to offer. And again, it's probably a game like this that City are going to set up to be somewhat a little bit more defensively secure. And again, I feel like what Pep's done is he's made them really hard to beat in the Champions League. Maybe in a league they're not gonna concede a whole lot. They might actually even set a record for that. But maybe their offense can be stifled a little bit, and they'll probably win a lot of games like 1-0 or 2-0. Uh, but maybe someone can catch them in the league, but at least in a Champions League, this unless they have some key injuries, at the back, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to see how someone's gonna get them. Another thing that was weird was it felt like Grealish was maybe a left back this game, because Walker was played up top and he was operating as like the right winger slash right back as well. And I'm curious if maybe Pep actually asked the 2 wide players to basically be a mix between a right winger and a fullback, or a winger and a fullback, because we saw Grealish get back and do some incredible defensive work in this game. He was poor on the ball again, but the way he was able to get back Almiron, and seeing anytime like Almiron was maybe able to take on Gvardiol, Grealish was there to join him, and that was so. Well, we'll get to that game, but before City do go on to beat Sevilla, I do kind of want to touch a little bit on this, and I think let's see, they went on to win in NPKs, but and they dominated in stats. I think they had 78% possession in both halves. But Ederson had to stop El Nesri a couple of times to maybe having a hat trick. It didn't feel like City could handle him either in the air, or he was making some pretty good runs in behind. But I think in this game there was a lot of a similar story from last week. I thought Akanji and Ake were really sloppy with the ball, and it seemed like the CBS crew or the Paramount crew was basically saying, City missing Kevin De Bruyne's eye for a pass and Gundogan's late runs. It was another game that Holland really struggled to get touches in. And I thought it was another game that Grealish struggled to impact the game. He was getting on the ball and again just killing any kind of attacking momentum that they had when he was getting it. And I thought it was relatively shockingly easy for Sevilla to defend City. And there was a serious lack of width in their attack as well. And they didn't really try many crosses, and basically the goal comes from the one time they actually do get the ball out wide, they send it in, and it's Cole Palmer of all people. He comes on from the bench a bit like he did versus Arsenal, and gets the goal to at least make it 1-1 to get it to BKs. And weirdly enough, in that game, kind of like in the Champions League final, Ederson was clutched. So maybe the reason why they even won was Cole Palmer gets the goal, but again, Ederson did basically keep them in it. Sevilla didn't have a whole lot of the ball. They didn't have a whole lot of shots. I think they only had like 3 or 4 on target all game, but all of them were close to being. Anytime El Nesri was getting it behind, it looked like he was about to score, and Ederson was doing well to come out and make some key 1v1 saves. Um, but to get started with the Newcastle and City game, the lineup was a little different. I mean, in possession, it was almost like Diaz and Gvardiol were two in a back four, and then you had the midfield was Kovacic. Rodri is like kind of centrally, like a central anchor. Sometimes Rodri was actually going back to form kind of like a fake back three, but they were playing really high up. They were playing a very high defensive line here, but they can do that now. Uh, and then Akanji was kind of like being asked to kind of join, basically be a third body in midfield. He wasn't really good on the ball, but just it seems it's so hard to play through them. And I think that's really what you saw Newcastle struggle with. But yeah, it was just like Walker and Grealish were the only guys really doing wide areas. Um, and they were basically doing both in defense and forward. And Newcastle didn't respect Walker, and that was kind of a problem too. And then Foden and Alvarez kind of just had a free role to just kind of run wherever any kind of the channels were, any kind of space was. And then Holland was kind of asked to just hey, man the attack all by man the back Newcastle's back line all by yourself. And to be fair, he did a whole lot of running that did create these spaces that Foden and Alvarez were able to operate in. So I mean, Grealish probably didn't enjoy this game, especially because he ended up kind of missing up on those chances because he'll go like 20 minutes without even getting a touch on the ball. He's just constantly having to run without it. So I don't know if that is going to affect him this season, or not. But again, any other day he probably does kind of bury these. And then with Newcastle, I think Eddie Howe did kind of get this lineup wrong. So he went with kind of the same thing he went with last week, which they won at 5-1 or 4-1. So you can, I guess, understand that a little bit. I thought Anthony Gordon was really, really poor. And I thought it was interesting to see Joe Linton over Sean Longstaff, because Longstaff, what he was really known for last year was, it seems like he was Newcastle's kind of player of the season when they were out of possession. He tracks runners. He makes up a lot of ground in that midfield. He's maybe not necessarily the best in possession. Joe Linton's a little bit more attack minded. But I thought where City really do score the goal, it's because Joe Linton and Gordon were switched off. And early on, you saw Dan Burn was being asked to guard Kyle Walker. Watch whenever Walker went out wide because no one was marking him. And then whenever Foden was kind of getting onto that side as well, Dan Burn was outmatched. He was outnumbered. And that was happening a whole lot. And it didn't seem like Gordon didn't recognize you at least need to, if not Foden, you need to do something with Kyle Walker, and he wasn't. He was just kind of staying a little bit more centrally. Joe Linton was as well, and I think to kind of get started with the game, I thought relatively not a whole lot happened. No, City basically dominated the first like 15 minutes as you would expect. The Newcastle I thought did well to kind of handle an early City wave. But they did start to grow into the game a little bit. I thought they moved the ball as well as they maybe could. City were turning it over a little bit, but the first chance comes, I think, in the 13th minute. And the reason I want to touch on this is it's a sequence that foreshadows how City scored their goal later on. So Man City figure out early that Anthony Gordon wasn't really running back to track Walker on the wing, and it means Dan Burn has to do it. And so Walker gets the ball here. He forces Dan Burn to come out to him, and that allows Foden to run into a little gap created there, on top of the Newcastle box. And then Foden immediately closed down here because Newcastle actually do have numbers to defend here, but later on they don't. And I think it ends up going to Akanji and he tries a shot and nothing happens here. And then we have a 20 chance in the 27th minute. Man City forces or creates something for Alvarez. It's crossed in, but it's defended. But again, it's important to highlight because this is what Foden was doing all game. finding gaps behind Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali, and basically in front of the Newcastle back line, getting the ball on the turn, dribbling upfield, and then quickly picking out a teammate upfield. And then we get to the goal scored by Julian Alvarez. And Man City gave them a warning early on, but a few things happen here to touch on as well. I mean, it starts with basically a City throw in, and the center backs have the ball, and they pass it backwards. I think Rodri shows for the ball. And he's the first one to pass it forwards to Kovacic, and it's so hard to get City to turn the ball over if they don't want to play a risky pass. And here, because you never know when they're going to just go sideways or backwards, or when they actually are going to go a little forward, and you can't really send for Newcastle. You can't really send a lot of people forward to press them high. And the reason is because if you do that, you create a greater space for Holland to chase the ball and to run on top to. Uh, so that's the reason why Holland really does work for the City team, even though he doesn't do a whole lot of touches and do the link up play. It's because of that. Uh, Sometimes City are trying to bait teams to do that because that ball over the top will always be on. And so here Kovac just gets the ball. He quickly finds Walker out on the wing, free again, unmarked. Walker then passes it back to Kovacic. And then Kovacic then threads a really nice forward ball, kind of splitting between Joe Linton and Dan Burn to Phil Foden's feet. And this is where the goal comes from. Again, I mentioned Joe Linton and Dan Burn. Anthony Gordon is nowhere to be found here. And when you play 4-3-3, part of being an attacking three in that formation is you do have to do defensive duties. Either being the first presser on someone on the ball when it's on the wing, or when the wing when they another team does an overload on the down the wing, that's your responsibility as well. So yeah, I thought it was poor by Gordon here, but Foden collects the ball from Kovacic, and then successfully gets Botman to run at him. So Botman has to leave his space to run to Foden, and then that leaves no one to mark Alvarez. He's completely free in the Newcastle box, and then Alvarez basically takes a touch and then fires. He could have taken multiple touches. He could have tried to look to pass it to someone else, and no, he tries for goal and it's rewarded. It's like he takes a direct action, and this game was dull for the most part, but this is a world class goal. And from Foden's run, to get the ball to Joe Linton, to Kovacic, kind of picking him out. The pass by Kovacic is unreal. When you look at it from the other angle, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of space for him to fit that in. And the Alvarez finish is just he's I think he's inside the box, but it's probably 20 yards out. And basically he tells Nick Pope to take it out of his net. Pope, I think, does get a glove, a touch to it with the dive, but it's hit so hard. I can't blame Pope for this. Uh, and then a couple of chances that I have, notes that I have for Newcastle is Almiron specifically was really struggling with a Kanji and a Gvardiol on him. It seemed like, and Grealish I thought was funny enough was struggling in his 1v1s as well. And then I have a chance for Holland here, and it's maybe the second chance created by Phil Foden. Getting the ball kind of near the box and then playing a ball on the run that Holland was making, and Holland just miscontrols this ball out of bounds. Normally he doesn't do this, and if he gets a better touch here, he's probably it's probably getting he's at least probably creating a goal scoring chance. And so we get to halftime. It was only that one goal lead. The observations I had was City were looking just really hard to play through. Rodri, Akanji, Gvardiol, Diaz, they probably look like towers, from a player's perspective, and they're all comfortable covering spaces out wide. And City can now play a high line now, because they all have the pace to make up ground and recover now. Uh, and for Newcastle's perspective, I did feel like they did enough to stay in the game. They could have been blitzed after the Alvarez strike, and it didn't. It seemed like they did pick their moments to kind of keep the ball a little bit. They weren't just trying to go for home run balls to Ishak and just losing it over and over again. So I mean, Tonali and Bruno and whatnot, Trippier did a good job to at least kind of keep the ball side to side, to at least get some touches on the ball. But they weren't really able to create anything. And I thought the thing that I was thinking about before entering this game is it's because City and Newcastle played each other 3-3 last year, and I was like, well, the only reason why it was 3-3 was because Kevin De Bruyne was unreal. Man City had Gundogan for a couple of those goals, but another thing too is Newcastle had Saint Maximin last year, and St. Maximin almost retired Kyle Walker in space last season. And Newcastle just don't have that kind of dynamicism out on the wing now. They've replaced it with a little bit different, something different. And sometimes that might actually be what it takes. Someone to beat the City defenders 1v1 because it seems like they're going to be in the right in the right areas, in the right shape. They're going to be in the right position at least at the start of it. And so I think that really is it, and that kind of go on to show because Almiron kind of struggled with that as well. Second half, I thought Newcastle did come out fighting a little bit better. They did have a couple of efforts, and then Howe made some changes. So he brought Barnes off. He brought Barnes on for Gordon and Longstaff on for Joe Linton. And then what's funny enough is I think he did it because Gordon was on a yellow, and then Barnes immediately picked up a dumb yellow himself. But I'm going to touch on a couple of the Man City chances because Newcastle again didn't really create anything this game. Uh, so it's another chance for Holland. It's another poor finish, but it's incredible by Foden here. And so Newcastle look to have a pretty good setup here, where there's Eistek, and then there's kind of like a wall of four Newcastle players blocking any path to Holland in the middle. And so what City do is they go wide to where Foden collects the ball, and he then passes it hard to Grealish, who one times it back to Foden. So Foden can receive the ball and be on the move still. I mean, this is a move that Messi has done a lot over the years. Uh, and I didn't think Grealish had a good game, at least on the ball, but he was terrific here to read what Foden wanted, and he did well to get Foden the ball because he's a Newcastle player dripped all over him when this happens. And so Foden is able to get past that wall of Newcastle players, and he's able to get in behind, and he's able to have a free look at that Newcastle back line, on the move, and that's when he plays a perfectly weighted through ball in the box that Holland reads. He collects and he cuts, and he gets a shot on, and again he kind of scuffs it wide. I mean, even though he scuffed it, if it's on target, it's probably going in because Pope was rooted to the ground. But there were like three or four times when Foden kind of did stuff like this, where he was able to get the ball in behind the midfield and back line, and he was able to read to read where Holland was running and able to play him through. Uh, and then so we have another chance for Holland. So Holland gets good power out of the shot here. Uh, it's hit right at Pope. So again, he maybe could have done better, but the key again is Foden just kind of floating into the pocket where Newcastle aren't marking him. He gets the ball from Diaz here. He turns and then runs upfield, playing in Holland again. It's a fantastic ball by Diaz here. Again, you just don't know when City are going to be boring and just pass it side to side, or actually, be direct. It just seems it's got to be hell to play against them. Um, and then, there was a Newcastle half chance. Rodri actually, of all people, made a mistake. I thought he made a mistake for Burnley as well. That could be something maybe to watch because Rodri has even said that he thought he played too many games last year, and he's maybe starting to feel a little fatigued. So this is not something that he normally does. In 2 games, he actually has given the ball away. But Gvardiol here is able to stop Wilson from playing through Almiron. And Gvardiol maybe didn't have his best game, in possession. He was kind of boring. He does amazing here to stop Callum Wilson because I think Callum Wilson has a chance to be 1v1 versus Ederson. And Gvardiol does a really good job to just stick out a leg, win the ball back, and it basically stops this attack. So Man City are used to like Cancelo playing at fullback for them, and it's going to be a little bit different, especially if Gvardiol is going to be passed to play there. Uh, but this is what Pep probably wants. He wants his fullbacks to be there to stop transition attacks on them, and Gvardiol does that. And then towards the end, Foden nearly scores himself. Actually, having been played a pass by Holland, funny enough. And another note I have here is it felt City targeted Dan Burn all game, knowing he lacked a bit of pace, and like because none of these attacks happened on Trippier's side. But here, Foden just kind of runs past Burn. He gets into a danger area. He fires a shot from a tight angle, and I think Pope is able to stick a leg out. Um, but I mean, that's just it. I mean, the full time take I had was City have turned Etihad into a fortress. It was also their home opener after celebrating the treble season. So and, in front of their fans, so they were never going to lose this game. It was silly of me to think otherwise. Newcastle did a good job to at least somewhat make it difficult. There was it was in the 75th minute or so. It was still a 1-0 game. The fans were actually kind of yelling at Pep, "Hey, make some subs," which is that actually is something that's interesting. Pep just doesn't use subs like ever. I don't think he used them in the. He maybe used one in the Super Cup as well. And yeah, it was just Newcastle did at least well to in that respect. I do, they just lacked a little spark in the final third. Really, the difference I think was Ederson's ability to be an additional outfielder versus Pope. That was really on display. But another one really was Foden. Foden being able to just receive the ball under pressure and create something with it. Newcastle just didn't have that this game. And it just defensively, it seemed like City had every blade of grass covered out of possession. So I think it's a wake up call maybe for Newcastle, but at the same time they've definitely arrived because this was not an easy game for City, and maybe on a different day, Pep. I mean, Holland does kind of score a couple of those, and they do win comfortably, but the chances weren't really easy for them to come. I think City had 14 shots and only 4 on target. Newcastle only had 7 shots, I think 1 on target. XG was 1 for City, and Newcastle was 0.29. City with 60% of the ball, you expect that. 600 passing, 90% accuracy, you expect that. Um, but I mean, Newcastle at least did somewhat make it difficult for them. Um, to focus on City, I do think it's interesting that maybe the City's treble from last season could take a toll on someone like Rodri, because he's spoken about that. Kevin De Bruyne obviously has the injury. Alvarez was supposed to play for Sevilla, and apparently he only played 10 minutes because of tightness. Alvarez was able to play in this game and scored a fantastic goal. So it does seem like City are at least looking into to bringing a couple new players. Maybe Pep is thinking about that as well. So this is going to be probably a different Man City team than we saw last season. Uh, could be good. Could for the rest of the league, maybe City will be more competitive, or maybe City will be even harder to beat. We'll have to see. But the Foden cam roll was I've heard so many people on Sky or whatnot that have said there's been a debate on what Phil Foden's best position is. Uh, and they've already said, "Oh, it's a 10." And I've always been confused by that because you rarely really see him as a 10. This game showed I was wrong, because it's not easy to do what he's doing. It's one thing to play out wide or play in a half space, which is what he's really what he's done for City. He also City haven't been able to play him this way because this is what Kevin De Bruyne is for them. But Kevin De Bruyne is a different player, but it's not easy to make this change. It's a different skill set to receive the ball as a cam player, a central attacking player with a free roll, than as a winger because you have to scan your surroundings when you're in the middle of the field. You likely have to turn quicker to get on the ball because you have less time. The center of the pitch is usually more congested, more people around you. Maybe you have a center back being close to you that can make a challenge on you from behind that you can't see. And very often you actually see guys struggle in this role. The touch fails them to receive the ball. It's not just about being creative and being fun when you get the ball. It's just being able to receive it under pressure that a lot of people struggle with. And Foden's half turn was unreal in this game. And I'm thinking back now that I have seen this. Foden did something very similar in the Champions League final, and the reason why I kind of forgot about it is it didn't actually lead to a goal, and it should have. He did an amazing half turn in the second half that probably should have killed off Inter Milan. And the only reason why maybe it kind of got the reason why I maybe forgot about it is when it came down to actually finishing the chance. He hit a weak shot, I think, right to the keeper. But it seems he's really good at doing this little half turn and doing a nice little drag back to get the ball quickly on the run, and he really seems quicker with the ball than just such a traditional sprint. Um, and another thing to think about is Alvarez delivers when Pep plays him. Um, it's funny he seems to really enjoy playing with Holland because Holland kind of gets all the attention, and it seems like Alvarez likes shattering him a little bit. But it also seems like when Alvarez does get his chance to play with Holland. Now, sometimes when Alvarez is kind of played by himself, it's not nearly the same. Uh, but it seems, yeah, he at least is a player that will take a chance. Sometimes you just kind of need that. City sometimes want to just kind of pass the ball in, and it can be really really dull. This is the reason why Kevin De Bruyne works so well for them. Is Kevin De Bruyne is that kind of player as well. Gundogan was kind of the same thing, where it's not necessarily Alvarez isn't a script player. I guess I'll put it that way. And then another positive is City has options now to play when Stones can't go for them, both in midfield and Kovacic. And both in midfield with Kovacic and at center back. But I think Kovacic, at least when City are without possession, Pep's added legs around Rodri, which is going to help him. He doesn't have to do this goofy stuff with Stones. in midfield anymore, and he can play. Stones can still creep into midfield if he wants because they can play a high line. Uh, but Kovacic can cover so much distance. He can recover on defense. In possession, he's silky. And if City need to score a goal, maybe he'll frustrate people. But he can carry and he can create. He can dribble. Uh, and he does have a shot on him. Every now and then he'll score a banger. But obviously, people are looking at replacing Gundogan, and Pep hasn't really done that. He's changed things up a little bit. And then again, I kind of mentioned it before, but it's got to be a nightmare from the player level to look up and see just how tall and physical. Like there has to be very very little space to play a ball into, because Akanji, Gvardiol, Stones, Ake, Diaz, Walker, I think are all over 6 feet, and it just has to be like it has to be like there's really nowhere to play a ball to without it getting turned over. You can't go over the top anymore. Pep has found a way to stop that. Pep can play a high line to make the midfield really compact, and you can't really play a ball over the top because they've got defenders now that can make those recovery runs. Um, so yeah, it's I don't really know what to think of Man City. I've been kind of downplaying them a little bit this season. At least defensively, I need to not do that anymore. Or at least maybe the way to get them is if Akanji and Ake are the center back pairing. Maybe Pep's trying to rotate some people in, and maybe they give a ball away. Maybe that'll kind of be the way to do it. But they're not going to lose many games, obviously. Uh, and then with Grealish is a weird player. It's funny because he's come into Man City kind of being one of the more attacking players in the league, and Pep's almost turned him into a fullback. But he's fantastic at running back and defending down the wing now. I feel like he didn't used to do this. Uh, and because there've been a couple of times now where he's done this. I mean, he did a job on Almiron. I remember, last year when City played Liverpool, he did an amazing job to stop Liverpool from doing a counter where Salah had almost a tap in goal, and he did an amazing job to run back and stop that pass from coming off. And so at least Pep's gonna like him that way. They'll bring in potentially Jeremy Doku that I've seen, and maybe they've been links to actually Eze. Funny enough, but at least someone like Doku I think is actually confirmed now, and that's going to be someone that's a little bit more dynamic that can 1v1 in 1v1 situation. So I don't know if maybe the idea is to actually try Grealish in a number 8 role in midfield a little bit more now. Because in the past, it seemed like Pep was trying that in the beginning. I think there was a game for Spurs that they opened up with like 2 years ago, and it was awful because Grealish was not doing any kind of defensive duties, was not tracking back at all. He came to Villa as a 10 player, uh, and it seems like Grealish has learned to actually embrace maybe doing a little bit more of that defensive work. So maybe this will work out a little bit better. Obviously, Grealish is good in possession, and it seems it's just when he gets into the final third, he's a horror show. So maybe that would actually benefit both. And I think a bit like with Arsenal, uh, I think the main storyline obviously was let's see, uh, uh, oh, a bit like with Arsenal, City do get the job done. It wasn't necessarily pretty. I think, but I do think the main storyline is going to be talked about is Foden. But I do think Alvarez is worth mentioning as well for reasons I've already said. And then it does look like they've signed Jeremy Doku of Rennes. Um, and so, to touch on Newcastle, it did seem like Ederson versus Pope what was on display, and Newcastle would finally get the ball, and then Pope was not nearly as comfortable with his feet and was either hoofing it away, and also City have all these towers now. City are going to win second balls almost all the time, so you're not going to be able to out physical City anymore. Even on second balls. Uh, it's just it's going to be rough, and I do think maybe Howe made a mistake a little bit with the lineup, but another thing too is maybe Howe or Newcastle's board have made a mistake choosing Harvey Barnes over Musa Diaby of Aston Villa because he was linked to Newcastle for a year. Now maybe Barnes actually does end up working out for them as well. Barnes does have goals on him, to be fair, and Barnes is quote unquote prem proven. Springing someone from the Bundesliga, they haven't always had the best go of it coming from here. Though Kevin De Bruyne was, did okay coming from Wolfsburg. Uh, so I think that was maybe a mistake. And another thing that was noticeable was City targeted Danbury in this game, and I don't know if he's good enough. At least on the level that for Newcastle to reach, so that they for Newcastle to maybe take an additional step. Uh, and that said, does look like they brought in Lewis Hall from Chelsea. So to be honest, adding him into the mix might make them a little bit stronger. At least, yeah, Dan Burn really did struggle for pace in this game, and he was targeted. Now, it said he targeted him with 2v1s, and normally shouldn't be an issue if you have help, if you have defensive help, either from the wide player or from the midfield. And Dan Burn was being left on an island, so that's not really fair for him as well. And then it does look like I had in the notes that they were going to get faced Newcastle without Alexi McAllister, but it looks like that's actually been overturned. Uh, but the next game is with Liverpool at St James Park. A year ago, where this game happened, there was a lot of hype going into the game. I think it was in February, and Pope got sent off in the first half. Liverpool went exploded out of a cannon, scoring two unbelievable goals, and then Pope got sent off. And then, weirdly enough, Liverpool were up a man with like 7 minutes to go in the game, and Newcastle forced Allison to like making 9 saves, yeah, down a player. So Newcastle are going to want to revenge a little bit for that game. So Newcastle could be, I mean, Liverpool could be rocking into a bit of a buzzsaw. So I'll be a little bit worried about that. But I do think it was a bit of a wake up call when you aren't up against like a suicide high line with a team that really can't defend it. So it was different than playing Villa's back line. But another thing too is, the Etihad is not an easy place to play, and Newcastle did well to make City uncomfortable. It is worth saying that as well. Um, and then we'll move on to Arsenal and Crystal Palace. See how we're doing for time. As always, not good. Um, I mean, Arsenal do go on to beat Crystal Palace 1-0, thanks to a PK from Odegaard. And I guess Odegaard is Arsenal's new PK taker. Captain of the team, to be fair, but last year was Saka. Uh, this game didn't have a ton of it until really I think in like the 78th minute or so. Crystal Palace did end up losing. No, Arsenal did end up losing Tomiyasu to I guess a second yellow, and so they had to play down a man, and that allowed Palace to somewhat get back into the game. There were a couple chances where Palace maybe had a PK shout, but really, Arsenal had like 80% of the ball, pretty much the entire game until that red card happened. Then Palace were able to kind of flip it up a little bit. Arsenal did well to defend deep, and then what's weird enough is they were able to buy like a cheap foul, basically right at the 90th minute mark, 89th minute maybe, and there was like 7 minutes of extra time. And then from that moment on, Arsenal actually were able to kill the game out with down a man. Like Arsenal's, Arteta brought on Jorginho, brought on a couple more possession-minded players, brought on Zinchenko, and Arsenal were able to kill the game out down a man. That was impressive. So they saw this game out really well. Um, I mean, there wasn't maybe kind of the player in the first half to touch on was Nketiah, and Nketiah is actually responsible for the PK. Nketiah was close to having a 10 out of 10 performance. He really did play well. So he nearly drew a PK in the first half. He does well. He shows some clever feet and pace to get past Joe Ward, and Joe Ward actually did a fantastic job on Martinelli. So Nketiah was able to just kind of show Martinelli up a bit. A bit. Here's how you actually take on a player, and it's close. If this was called, I don't think it's getting overturned. And then Nketiah nearly scores the opener. A couple minutes later, he gets the ball kind of played to him. He's able to run at the keeper, and I think right as Mark Gahey is trying to dive at him, Nketiah goes to the ground and tries to kind of like it's like a slide shot in, and it just kind of pangs off the post. He does well and everything here, but it's just unlucky, to maybe say. And then there was like a brief moment when Palace really did have a chance. It looked like Edouard was actually in on goal, and then Saliba has an amazing. It's maybe lucky, I don't really know, but he has an amazing last ditch tackle to basically. I think it saves a goal. If nothing else, because it gets the ball, it saves a PK, and maybe it saves a red card. Uh, so it's risky to do this. It did look like Palace or Edouard was in on goal and was going to give Ramsdale at least a 1v1 opportunity in the box. Um, So I mean, Palace did set up for that for a little bit of the counter. And for the most part, it seemed like Arsenal were really struggling to move the ball. They had 80% of the ball, but really not a whole lot of penetration. I do think that getting Zinchenko back will help with this. To be fair, and then there's maybe the first chance I think on target actually did come in the 40th minute, and it's a decent Odegaard shot, but that just kind of showed he had 80% of the ball, and your first shot on target didn't come until the 40th minute. Another note I had here was Arsenal's wingers are too one-footed now. They want to make Saka and Martinelli were doing the same thing every single time they got the ball. They were making the same cut, getting onto trying to get from the ball out wide to get the ball on the stronger foot, and trying to get something on the basically cutting towards goal that way. You never really saw them try to go down the byline once. So I think that was kind of they become predictable a little bit. That was the reason why maybe Nketiah was able to get past Joe Ward. Joe Ward was kind of maybe expecting him to just kind of do the same kind of cut towards goal, and no, he decided to keep it stay wide, go and try to get to the byline, and that's where Joe Ward ended up screwing up. Uh, so I think in many respects, it was very similar to what we saw versus Forest. Arsenal were able to beat Palace. I mean, beat Nottingham Forest, scoring 2 goals in the first half. But the first like 20-ish minutes of that game was kind of the same thing. They were really slow moving the ball. Um, but it's another thing where Arsenal is trying a bit of a different midfield this year, and maybe it's just not necessarily coming off. It does seem, it's not necessarily a Declan Rice and Party problem. I do think Havertz is kind of struggling a little bit. Havertz was very close to actually creating an opening chance for Martinelli in like the 4th minute. He did well to receive the ball. He had a nice pass across goal that found Martinelli. But other than that, it does seem like he's really struggling to adapt to his role. Now he's playing a different position, and you expect maybe some growing pains, but it's still I need to see this with Sinchenko in the team to submit because Sinchenko will cut in, play inverted, and they'll look so much different with the ball that maybe Havertz will be able to just basically be an extra number in the final third. And Havertz is a big body, so maybe that's kind of what Arteta is thinking. But I don't, and maybe when Martinelli gets the ball out wide, he'll try to send some crosses in, and Havertz will be a target. Maybe that's kind of the way he's thinking here, but it's not. It hasn't looked great at least to start here. And then another note I have is Nketiah has looked bright for them, and it's just he nearly drew the PK, nearly, and he did hit the post, and another chance happened where he got 1v1 on the keeper, and he did everything right here except he messed up his chip. It's unfortunate too because he messed up a really good chance by a really good pass by Declan Rice in the final third. I feel like Rice could do that a little bit better. But Nketiah, I feel like if Arteta does decide to roll with him and have to put faith in him, I think he'll be rewarded. I think there's a 17 to 20 goal striker here. To be honest, I know that does sound a little bit outlandish, but he's going to get chances in the boatloads, and I don't think he has an issue finishing. Uh, sometimes I don't necessarily think his touch is necessarily that heavy either. I think he can link up play. It's sometimes he might struggle a little bit, to get in the game. Maybe I think last year we saw him trying to do what Gabriel Jesus was doing, and it wasn't really working. But I think he recognizes where to be in the box and when to make the right run. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it in multiple games now when he's playing, and it's kind of the same. He has an understanding of where to be in the box, and the finishing was just off at least here. But later on in the second half, you see he makes a similar run and he draws the PK. So I think we'll get to the goal or the PK. And Palace are slow to react a little bit here, but it is clever. So it's almost like a pick play, like something in basketball or the NFL, where Party kind of runs and screens for Nketiah to run behind him. If anyone's trying to man mark Nketiah, you have to go through Partey, and that little second delay allows him to be free. But even then, that's if someone switched on. Palace actually were completely late to react, and there's no one near Nketiah when he gets the ball in the box, and then Johnson comes out and goes to ground and completely catches him. Um, and then it was interesting to see Odegaard take the PK, and it was heart in the mouth moment a little bit because I have Odegaard, for fantasy, and I was going against my brother who has Saka. I thought Saka was going to get a goal, and no, because Saka actually had the ball, and then he handed it to Odegaard. So That worked out for me. I ended up kind of beating him, I think, because of that. And it was a strong PK, to be fair. And Saka did miss one versus Barcelona and did have that miss versus West Ham last year. So uh, it makes a little bit sense to me, to be honest. Odegaard is their captain, and from there it seemed Arsenal were probably going to win this game relatively comfortably, to be honest. And then really, because they were playing keep away with the back line. Palace couldn't get anywhere near the ball, and then the game completely changed with Tomiyasu getting sent off. Um, and then there was a chance for Palace to maybe have a shout, because Eze nearly draws another PK where he has amazing feet in a tight angle, and I do think Partey clips him here. But and it could, because there is real contact, but he does go down soft. And one thing that's worth saying is he tried to do this earlier in the first half, and I think it doesn't help his case that he tried to do it twice. So, if it's called in real time, I don't think VAR overturns it, but he didn't buy himself goodwill with the ref for what he did in the first half. So that's probably the reason why this wasn't given. It's close, but close, but no cigar. I guess is what you could say. Um, I do think it was. The funny thing about Palace actually playing up a man is it almost felt like it unsettled them for a little bit. I mean, they did finally get a little hold of the ball, the final 10 minutes or so. But it seemed for a while, Palace was set to kind of play without the ball and counter on teams, and now they had to break down Arsenal sitting in a block. And really, it was only the only person that seemed comfortable on the ball and doing anything was Eze, and Arsenal recognized that really easily. And, SA was able to at least, create that semi PK, but it wasn't really able to do anything other than that. And it didn't seem like, Palace were trying to get up ball out wide, try some crosses in, and Arsenal were able to defend that. Arsenal are a pretty tall team now. So, and again, Arteta did well to bring on Jorginho and Zinchenko when he finally did. And I do think if maybe the positive for Arsenal is, for these couple of two games, you haven't had Zinchenko. And I do think because we saw it last year, I do think they're a different team when he comes on. The passing will look different. I think you'll probably see him find Odegaard in more central areas. I just think that he'll be the offense will run a lot more smooth, and I do think maybe the idea will be Havertz trying a little bit further forward. Um, and then Arsenal do win. Who cares if it's not convincing? Second game of the season. Brighton are winning these games. 4-1, 5-1, and no one's picking them to win a title. Though maybe that could change. But you picked up max points, and you did so, playing down a man for 30 minutes, so you showed some pretty good grit. And then I think Palace just deserved to lose by being switched off on a free kick. And then Johnson, I didn't think was their keeper. I thought it was Guaita, and apparently they have an issue with a contract with him. So Palace are a little. They might have some turmoil. It looks like they've kept on to Olise, which is good, but it seems like I think I saw City actually is linked to Eze. So other teams are linked to Eze or to their players. I think Liverpool have been trying to get to Corey, but Palace probably going to ask for Casado money for him, and so they might be able to hold on to him. So that'll be good. I mean, Palace do have a number of players injured as well, so it's not necessarily the worst result. And they did a good job here, at least making things difficult for Arsenal. That is worth to be said as well. I mean, it was 60%, or it was close to 70% possession for Arsenal in the first half. It ended up actually being Palace 47, Arsenal 53 for the game, mostly because of the red card. Palace did have 9 shots in the second half. The red card did help them in that respect because it ended up being 14 and 4 on target. Arsenal 14 shots and 3 on target. Again, Nketiah maybe could have done a little bit better, but it seems like only Nketiah is really even able to create some chances. I did think if Martinelli doesn't shape up, he needs maybe the idea could be to try Trossard a little bit more, or try Martinelli actually in the middle. Maybe try Nketiah, try to see what he can do out wide. Just seems they've become a little bit predictable. I think teams saw the tape that they did last year, and they're ready for it. Well, I'm sure Arteta will get them to look a little bit better and shape it up. And just I think maybe one thing to highlight, it's maybe a negative, but Partey has been tried at right back in a couple of these games. It's like it's fake right back. He starts out there and then kind of shifts in the midfield to. I think the idea is maybe to open up space for Odegaard to run into. I don't really think it's working at all. I think it's been weird to see Ben White and Saliba try as a center back pairing together with Gabriel being benched. I don't know if the idea is maybe just Arteta just doesn't rate Gabriel anymore. But I think another thing too is Tomiyasu is a right-footed player, and he's playing a left back. And I think I think he struggled. It's not just he struggled with the getting the red card. I think the red card was really harsh. I think one of the yellows was actually for a bad throw in, which is weird. Um, so obviously, you need a left foot player to play in left side in defense. So and Zinchenko obviously helps out with that. What sucks is Arteta probably thought he had some cover for Zinchenko because Zinchenko does have some injury issues with Timber, and it looks like Timber is going to be out for 7 months. Um, so that'll just be kind of something to watch. They do have a big game versus Man United, and I think 2 weeks. So we'll get to see we'll get to judge I guess both teams, on that game a little bit more. And I think for Palace, and there are two ways to kind of look at it. It's you looked poor, but you got it out a lucky 3 points, or you got it out a lucky 3 points, as champion sides sometimes have to do. Um, and the way they did kill off the game, I think was impressive. And Declan Rice has been, he's come in and he actually he made some interesting comments where he said in the first game he was asked to kind of be part of the diamond, and in this game he was a single pivot. Um, and so when you're in part of the left part of the diamond, that means he's going to have a little bit more, opportunities going forward with the ball. That's basically what the Shocker Bowl does. I've been wondering what the idea is with Rice and and Thomas Partey. Is Rice going to just be a defensive minded, stop transitions kind of guy, a guy to try to win the ball back, or is he actually going to be a little bit more forward and have some chances when Arsenal have controlling games, near the box? And they, uh, it seems like maybe the idea is both. So I thought that was interesting. And then yeah, with Palace, I think the best news is you are keeping Elise. It does seem like they've signed a 19-year-old from Brazil and Mateus Franca. But there's not a lot to say. I do think maybe unlucky a little bit, but maybe a positive is Ward and Tyreek Mitchell did do a good job making Saka and Martinelli look rather ordinary. There's something there. I do think Sam Johnston and Guaita they probably need to get that sorted out. Um, and maybe they are able to hang on to Decore. I do think Decore and Lerma are pretty good. That's a pretty good partnership. To play without the ball, that's pretty good steal at least in midfield. Um, and maybe they do have enough. I do feel like maybe in March they'll probably still be shaking, but they might have enough. Um, and then we'll move on to Tottenham and Man United in a bit of an interesting game in itself because well. Man United relatively actually, at least stats wise, played a pretty good game. But the way the second half played out, if anyone knows like a Man United fan or anyone like went online, it's been meltdown city, and I think maybe that actually is a little bit justified. But anyways, we'll get started with it. I mean, two goals. The first one from Sarr, and then Ben Davies, or maybe it's kind of a an own goal, but I think it was a statement game made by both teams. Spurs looked so much better defensively than they did last week. I think the tweak was playing Sarr over Skip, and then Richarlison hasn't necessarily worked out, but he is. I do think maybe there's still time. Given they've lost Kane, obviously it's gonna be a little different. Uh, but they have a new they're playing a completely different way than they did under Conte. I think Spurs fans have to be enjoying life right now because they didn't just beat Man United, maybe like the first time in their new stadium, but they did so playing some really attractive stuff. Um, and I think it's enjoyable to watch Spurs now. And then with Man United, I just don't think they're complete right now. But it is an eye opener. It's kind of similar with Wolves. It's just the midfield is way too easy to play through. Um, and it seems like they can be physically dominated a little bit and with loose balls in midfield because that's basically what happened in the second half. And the game maybe could have ended 2-2, given the chances United did have in the first half. And there was a decent PK shot, I thought, as well, to maybe get the opening goal. But I think even if Man United had gotten something from this game, it would have been window dressing over their problems. and there's still time for them, and I think they will look different with Rasmus Højlund, leading the line for them. That'll allow Rashford to play in his preferred position, but they look disjointed to me in midfield, and I think that's a major concern, and it feels like that's probably going to be a theme for the season unless they find a way to address that and fix that because right now, Mount and Bruno and Casemiro 3 is not working at all. When Ericsson has come on, Ericsson looks kind of off the pace a little bit, and it seems that hasn't really worked out. Maybe that'll be better in possession, but again, it was just they looked. It seemed whenever Man United lost the ball, there is a gap that Spurs were able to exploit every single time, and that's basically what we saw with Wolves as well. So that there's a massive issue because Casemiro can't. He's 31 now, and he played a lot of games last year as well. And Casemiro was arguably a defensive midfielder player of the season, next to Rodri, and I don't necessarily know if he can be asked to cover nearly as much ground as what they're asking him to do all by himself and last the whole season. So I do think there's a big chance. There's a big problem there. I mean, the couple chances did fall Man United's way. There's Anthony that kind of played Rashford in the box, and Rashford did have a chance to maybe score here 1v1, and Vicario did a good job to come off. Vicario for Spurs had a really good game for him, to be fair. Um, and then there's a big chance here where Rashford almost has an unreal. He misses an unreal assist attempt by Bruno. So it's set up by good play by Garnacho. He kind of stretches the Spurs back line. He receives the ball and cuts it back and finds Bruno, who tries just an insanely audacious pass, and just Rashford can't get the header. And then maybe the first chance did come to Kulishevsky, where it's a weak effort, but I think this showed where United were vulnerable. So Casemiro has the ball. There's no one around him, and he tries to play a risky ball to Bruno, and it goes right to Basuma, who carries it a bit and waits for Son to make his run, and then plays Son ahead of forcing Varane to sprint back because Wan-Bissaka is caught up field, trying to offer an overlap to Anthony. Varane does well to recover here, but Son still goes by him, and then Spurs move the ball kind of around the United's box. It found Kulishevsky. It's a tame effort, but again, it showed how just a little ball over the top when Man United lost the ball and Spurs were in. And then they were unlucky to maybe not get a PK called on them. So Garnacho did have a few good moments here. Getting the better of Pedro Pereira. So this was the PK shot. So on the play, Garnacho gets the ball from Rashford cutting inside, and he tries a shot and strikes Romero's hand, and he's going to block it, and the hand is up, and I feel like there was some controversy, some debate about this, and I actually don't think it's debatable because you see defenders now expose themselves holding their hands back when they lunge for blocks. Now you see it all the time, and if that's not going to be penalized, then what is the point of doing that? Because when defenders are doing that, they're exposing themselves. Like they're putting them off balance. That makes it easier for teams to fake a shot and go past them. So if that's the case, then there needs to be some kind of consistency here. Otherwise, you can't lunge for the ball and have your hand above your head and stop a shot that's probably going on goal. So I don't understand why there was a whole lot of debate here, and it was a fair shout because that game gets United the 1 goal lead. Maybe they can play a little bit more on the counter, maybe a little less. Maybe they're a little less vulnerable defensively. Who knows? And then we have a chance for Spurs, for Sarr, and it's a good save by Onana. And before this, Onana showed an incredible way to. We saw maybe how he's a little bit different than David De Gea because it looked like Spurs actually had a break, and because it was off maybe a Man United corner kick, a ball was kicked over the top, and out of nowhere, Onana basically met the ball at like the I don't know, the halfway line, and then had an outrageous crossfield pass that found Garnacho that almost led to something as well. But here we have Sarr getting a chance, and it's a good save by Onana as a keeper. Making a save as well, and it's so good by Madison. So he recovers a loose ball in his own penalty area, and he could easily put this upfield to safety. But he holds on to it and he cuts upfield with it, and he goes past Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez running at him. And from there, United are completely open. There's space everywhere for him. And he then passes it out wide to Udueke, who then passes out wide to Son, keeping the width. And I think Madison actually maybe could have gone the whole distance, but he is forced back by Mason Mount, doing a good job to recover. So Mason Mount, I think he only had 14 passes all game, but Mason Mount did do better without the ball this game, at least here. Um, and then after Son cuts it towards goal, he uses Odueke's run to confuse Wan-Bissaka before playing a really clever ball to Sarr, making a run in behind everyone where Onana does make a big save. Um, and then it looks like someone, or it looked like was it Sarr again? Someone had a rebound shot that was blocked off by Mount, kind of reading the block. So a couple good moments by Mount here. Um, and then there's a really big chance for Bruno. So Rashford missed up a header, and then here Bruno messes up an even worse header. It's a horrid attempt here, and I think the only thing is maybe he's surprised he's onside. But I'm good. Another thing to say is you can focus on Garnacho because again he did well to find some space away from Pedro Porro. He resisted the ball from a switch, and then laid it off to Luke Shaw, who hit an inch perfect cross. And Fernando's, I think, has to at a minimum put this on goal. And it's just I didn't think Shaw or Garnacho had good games over the 90, but they had good moments, and this was one of them. There's the two chances or three chances where United could have been up 2 goals, maybe with the PK, up 3 goals. But they didn't they get those chances to count, and then Spurs really did grow into the game after that. Starting with this one, so they forced that Onana save, but Spurs weren't really able to create a ton before this, and then they hit the post twice in like 20 seconds. So it took a while to get into the game, but it happens here. So it happens with a Pedro Porro strike first, and then Luke Shaw nearly has an own goal blocking Sarr's attempt. But again, it highlights a problem for United because Mickey Van de Ven has the ball. Rashford tries to pressure him, but Van de Ven sees that Anthony is marking grass, and there's no one near Odueke in the Man United box. Wan-Bissaka is forced to mark Son out wide, and so this is Anthony's person. And Van de Ven flips the ball over to Odueke, who makes a clever run or he has a clever way to control the pass. Fooling Varane, who's trying to switch on to him, but it's too late. And then Son sprints from out wide to receive the ball. He runs across the goal and then lays it off to Porro, who has a terrific shot, this is inches from creeping in the top of the net. This should have gone in. This is really nice. And then Sarr then tries kind of a cross. So Sarr gets kind of the recovery ball and then tries a cross, and it deflects off Shaw and it nearly bounces in. So we get to halftime, and Man United probably should have been ahead. I think at halftime, I don't think everyone was doing the freak out that they ended up doing in full time. Um, and I do think it was somewhat a little bit better, but I think the attacking three is still hit and miss, especially without the ball. They just none of them are doing anything to win it back, and that's really what Spurs exposed in the second half. And I thought Spurs did a better job, at least. Uh, they were exposed a little bit more out wide, and I thought they were crazy narrow versus Brentford. We didn't necessarily see that this game, so Pochettino in just a game or two has been able to fix him up a little bit. So good for him. And then especially with the addition of Sarr was fantastic. It sucks for Skip, but I think so, at least in this game, Sarr looked a better player. And then for the most part, it seemed Madison did have little room to do anything in the midfield. It was very congested. And it did seem like Son wasn't really able to get by Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka was doing a good job, at least when he was able to get when he was in possession. And Richarlison wasn't really able to hold on to the ball. So I had some notes that I was a little bit concerned a bit with Spurs, and then all of that stopped in the second half. So we'll get to the goal. It's scored by Sarr, and Spurs get the breakthrough really by Man United leaving Kulishevsky completely unmarked down the wing. So he's able to run into the box completely unbothered. He sends it across, it deflects off Martinez's shoulder, and then flies into the path of Sarr where he smashes it in. But it's funny enough is Sarr scores a very chance that Mateus Cunha had missed versus Man United just like a week ago. But no one picks up Sarr making a run unmarked, in the box as well. So they left Kulishevsky open, and they left Sarr here, and it's horrible communication by Garnacho and Luke Shaw just to allow Kulishevsky to be that open and free at the start of the move. You're playing 4-2-3-1. That means your attacking wide player sometimes needs to track back and cover when the fullback's out of position. That's what happens here. I think it's a theme when Garnacho has played, to be honest. Young, I get, but he did this last season, and he shouldn't be young anymore. At least, I shouldn't necessarily say that, but at least given the amount of games that he was able to play last season, he's almost a senior player now. He's not necessarily a youth player, even though maybe he's 20 years old. He needs to, at a minimum, do better at tracking back and doing defensive duties. And then Man United nearly got back with an answer where Anthony struck the post. So it's a weird where Man United had good moments in the game, but over the 90, they were completely outplayed. So there are two ways to maybe look at that. Which one do you think is better? Is a better reflection of how the season will go for them? I guess you can make an argument for both. But yeah, Anthony, nearly gets him back in the game. He so Martinez wins the ball off Richarlison, who I think is weak. That's maybe the one negative so far is Richarlison back to goal just isn't what they're used to. He's got to get better at this. It's still time for that to happen, but he's looking for a foul and just doesn't come. He goes down really soft, and then Bruno plays a really nice upfield ball to Anthony, cuts onto his left foot like he always does, and he gets a really good shot off, and he's beaten by the post. Um, and I think one note I had was it seemed like Spurs were having a little bit better attacking Shaw's side than Wan-Bissaka's, and I think we saw the same thing last week with Wolves. Wolves were doing all their attacking play seemed to be happening on Shaw's side. So I don't know if that's something that Man United should think about as well. I know they do have Malacia, who's injured now, but I thought Malacia was kind of struggling a little bit defensively last year as well. So that could be an issue. And then maybe Man United were unlucky to. Let's see. The Spurs maybe have a PK shot. So I think Man United were unlucky not to have a PK to go their way, and it maybe evens out because I think Martinez completely bowls over Romero in the box in the second half. So maybe you can make that case as well. And then Man United have a chance where Casemiro has a header that forces a good save by Vicario. It's right to him, but there's good power here. But then the game notes I have is Madison really started to blow to grow into the game and basically influenced the entire second half. Just the way he was floating, holding on to the ball, drawing multiple players onto him, passing it to the open man. It seemed like anytime he had the ball, Man United were trying to gravitate toward him, and that was leading someone else open on Tottenham. And they were really good at switching the ball and finding that open man every single time. And it especially showed up when Spurs had the lead because that forced Man United to actually go with them a little bit more. And Spurs were really good at just kind of drawing them out in Man United shape. We're not able to really turn them over. And just for a Spurs fan, it's got to be really fun because it doesn't feel like they've had that kind of player, at least in midfield, for a while. Uh, and you could argue they actually had three of them in midfield. It didn't seem like Sarr was really poor on the ball, and Basuma was amazing with it. They weren't just kind of dual winners. They were actually good at being on the ball and not being stressed, not turning it over when being pressed. Um, and then I do have a chance for Son. So the move starts with Son on the wing. I think it maybe ends up being fitting that Son actually has the shot because it is blocked at the last second, so it doesn't really threaten Onana, but it's close. But the reason I highlight this again is Man United are in good spot defensively, in my opinion, and they get the ball away a few times, but Spurs do amazing to keep recovering it. But not only that, they find ways to kind of spin away from pressure and find another teammate, and it just feels there are a couple backheel passes as well from Madison, Udueke, and Bissouma, and just the close control showed by all three players is again it's probably something that Spurs just haven't seen. You saw Harry Kane, Son, and Kulusevski do this over the years, but I don't think you've seen Udueke Udoki is a fullback. So you don't remember defenders and midfielders being this good and comfortable on the ball, and it's going to make it's going to make Spurs so much not just better to beat, better competitively, just fun on the eye. And then we get to the second goal. It is scored by Ben Davies. I think he gets the final touch. But Perisic just kind of gets the ball out wide again, completely unmarked. No one's covering him, and he gets the ball from Madison, who's just again he was dictating the second half. Dropping deep, going wide. He was just constantly moving, and I think it gave United fits. And another thing that was happening was it was just interesting to see how Madison played as a 10 player versus Bruno. I think if Bruno he should maybe study what Madison was doing in the second half because that sometimes it feels like he's looking for the ball forward all the time and he's waiting for it. He's not really coming back to get it. Uh, and I just feel like sometimes that's needed. Sometimes, anyways. And then Bruno did have a chance. It was kind of a half chance offside, but it was a good save by Vicario, and Vicario did have a better game this game. And so yeah, the notes I had was it was an evenish first half with United with a couple opportunities, but yes, that's the second half was a statement. And just the way they took control of the game and possession, the ability to win it back, and you really saw Bissouma, Star, and Madison take over the game. And so, I mean, the key stats, United edged them in stats. XG was 2 for them. Spurs was 1.7. Shots was 17 and 6 on target for Tottenham, and then Man United had 22 shots and 6 on target. But 14 shots came in the first half. Seven versus seven, 7 in the second half, and so that's kind of the issue. Once they did well in the first half, but once things got a little more difficult, once Spurs actually had control in the game, Man United were not able to win the ball back and really do anything. And then 3 big chances happened for United in the first half. So that's where you did have a chance to maybe win the game in the first half, and you didn't. But another thing to note is the passing. Man United with 332 with 83% accuracy. Tottenham with 428 with 85%. That's a low number for Man United, and that's twice now that they've been under 400 passes completed. For a side that you expect to be in the top 4, that to me definitely has to improve. And again, so a player to call out, and it's not just him, but just one player to call out was Mason Mount. I think he only completed 14 passes all game. Um, Sarr isn't someone you expect to be, really good on the ball, and he completed something like 35 passes, maybe even 40. Basuma was in the 50 range. Madison obviously was about 60 or so, and so there is there Man United are a work in progress. But to focus on Tottenham, I do think, the guy to touch on is James Madison. His understanding of a 10 player, it came to life in the second half. Just not giving the ball away, forcing United to put multiple people on him. That meant that Spurs had an extra guy somewhere else, and they were good at finding him. And again, his free role and understanding of not just staying in one area, just constantly being on the move. I thought was really good, and it's got to be exciting for them again because I do feel like maybe Christian Eriksen when he was there, over the years, he's probably the closest thing that they've had to this. But he's also on the ball, he's shifty. He's not just a good passer, he's in a polite way. He can make people miss. He's not really someone you think of like being fast, but he can be quick side to side. He's a fantastic touch on him, good passer. And he has a really good shot on him, as well. He scores goals, and we'll probably see that as the season progresses. And it's just kind of funny how it makes sense that he was someone from Leicester that went down would be picked up, and it probably would be him. And I think if you're a Spurs fan, you have to wonder what if, not just one if Kane had been able to play one more season with them, maybe even last season. I feel like they were maybe linked to someone like him last season. And it's always seemed like he's been a fit. He's been a player that they've kind of missed for a long time. And another thing that's helpful is he's allowed to be kind of this kind of creative, this kind of fun player on the ball because he's got 2 people behind him in the double pivot that provide him really good balance, that are helping, that are offering some defensive security. So they're not vulnerable about him. Madison can take some chances, and if they lose the ball, they can win it back with Sarr and Basuma. At least we saw in this game. So I thought the balance was really good. And another thing too is Sarr and Basuma showed a pretty good ability to play with the ball. So and they covered a lot of distance in their recovery runs in this game. But in possession, again, I didn't feel like Man United were even close to turning them over. It felt like Man United had to get breath tight to close down to make them somewhat uncomfortable. And Man United were not able to do that. And for a Spurs fan, I mentioned Madison's a bonus. Basuma has looked in like these 2 games looked like the Brighton Basuma again, and I don't know what the hell Conte was doing. But it seems like Pochettino has come in and he said, "Hey, have some freedom to express yourself a little bit." And maybe that honestly that's all it takes, having a manager that maybe believes in you a little bit more. Maybe that's a little more positive in possession. I can't really say because he looks a different player. He looks the player that he looks like at Brighton under Potter. Um, he looks clever on the ball. He's making forward passes. He was always in the right spot defensively as well. And that to me, I think is funny enough. I think that should have been the blueprint United should have copied. Is having 2 ball runners in the center. Having someone next to Casemiro, but also finding someone that's good in possession. That's not a liability with the ball at the feet. That can help you kind of build up play as well, and that allows you to play Bruno or Sancho in a free role without sacrificing yourself. And instead, they went for Mount. I feel like it doesn't make sense why they weren't in the immediate running for Caicedo, but or Lavia, to be honest. But it is what it is. And then I said, is it Udoke or Udueke, the fullback? Has had a couple debuts as well. It looks good defensively and really good on the ball. And it's interesting because last year it felt like this was a big need concern with them because they never really played a back four. Also, they didn't. They're playing a 4-2-3-1. I don't think they had the fullbacks to be able to play this way last season. So bringing him in as has been really good for them. I think they do have Reguilon on the bench to play as well because they were basically playing a back three and they were doing wing backs and it was like Ben Davies sometimes tried there. Uh, and it just did not. They were vulnerable defensively. They gave up a lot of goals even under Conte. So um, yeah, there's a lot of positives. I think if you're a Spurs fan, it's gotta be fun for them. And the keeper that maybe had a kind of a so-so start versus Brentford, I thought he had a really good game versus Man United to at least keep some of these saves. Some of these were offsides, but still important to make the save. And really, the only thing to think about now is does Richarlison kind of become the Richarlison that we've seen for Brazil, or is he going to be an issue? You've got money that you got from Kane. Now's probably the time to if you want to make a statement, go out and get someone. Someone that can hold the ball up and basically score you some goals. I don't understand why they wouldn't at least try to do something like that. I know Osimhen maybe is out of the range. Uh, I think PSG is maybe linked to Kulu Moani, but I don't think that's actually beneficial. Just they need to maybe address that because I don't. Also, they need to address it because if something happens to Richarlison, I don't know who's their second striker at the moment. I really think they've been linked to Lukaku of Chelsea, but I don't know what the idea is with them. But that's the if you're a Spurs fan, yeah, it's got to be fun because it's only the second game in charge for Pochettino, and already you've seen improvement. And yeah, and then with let's see, another thing too, we mentioned with Udoki BB and their fullback, 2 games now, and we've seen two different we've seen 2 different people try it at right back. So we saw it was Eddie Royal or it was Emil Royal in the first game versus Brentford, and then who even scored, and then it was Pollard here. I am curious if maybe they tried Jet Spence. It seems like Pochettino has given people a new leaf. If not, I don't understand why someone doesn't try to get Spence off Spurs. He did a really good job in that loan spell in League On last season. Did a good job versus Mbappe of all people. Uh, I didn't necessarily watch all of their games. I did watch that game. But these foot score, whatever, foot mob score was pretty good for the last when you look at how he did game to game. So I don't understand why someone wouldn't take a shot on him. Still young, maybe he's just a bad trainer. I don't really get it. But anyways, and then with Man United, you don't really want to pile on because this game a year ago they did lose this game by 4 goals. So you got do have improvement there. I do think Mount, Garnacho, and Anthony as starters needs to maybe be rethought. Maybe until Holland obviously will change things, but maybe try Mason Mount at left wing to just kind of play in the half space. Maybe play him a little further up top. Maybe play Rashford up top or Sancho. Maybe try Sancho right wing. Or I think I saw Martial is fit, so maybe that'll be the idea. Try Martial as striker again. Play Rashford at left wing. Maybe, or you can try. They tried Jadon Sancho as a false nine in the summer, so maybe that can be an option. But it's got to be different than what we've seen because right now it's not working. Um, and I don't know what you can do as far as finding Casemiro a second player. I think they've been trying to sell McTominay, but I mean, you can maybe offer some legs to Casemiro. Obviously, McTominay is not great. When it comes to build up play. But I don't really know other than Ericsson, I don't really know who you could play there. It seems like Mount can maybe offer something there, but it just seems he doesn't really understand the idea of holding. He's going way too far forward. Uh, and again, there can be there can be, I guess, arguments that it can take some time to learn a new position. Havertz is having to do that with Arsenal, but it's risky to be honest. And then so there are 2 ways to look at this. The almost chances or basically how you looked in the second half. And I do think Rashford to me doesn't look comfortable playing a striker. So that would be my immediate move is play Rashford in his preferred position. That'll maybe help you out a little bit. And 2 weeks in, it's early doors, and there's still time for them to. them change things up, but I don't 2 games in, I don't know what their game plan is. I don't know if they're trying to play off the counter. If so, the pressing needs to be better. And if so, Garnacho and Anthony got to be better at that because they've been really lazy so far. I don't feel like they have a plan to play without the ball. And it's 2 games that have been really easy to play through. 2 games where a number of guys aren't tracking free runners from the opposition, and that's why Tottenham get their first goal. Um, I don't understand what the plan is for Mason Mount, and then I don't know what the plan is for Casemiro. Uh, 2 games now where the gaps between the defenders and Casemiro and forward line are massive. And yeah, I do think they have been in the market. I do think I did sit there in the market for another midfielder. And I've seen links to Gravenbeck of Ajax, another former player of Ten Hag. And I would suggest don't do that. It hasn't worked where Ten Hag has been able to get guys that he already, maybe you can argue Lissandro Martinez has worked out. Maybe that could be the idea. Maybe try Lissandro Martinez next to Casemiro and play someone else at center back. I'm just kind of just that somewhat for some reason that to me makes the most sense, and I don't get why we haven't really seen that. Uh, but other than that, I don't really know. But as far as Gravenbeck goes, I don't think he helps you where United are struggling, where it's recovery in midfield, being good out of possession. Gravenbeck is one of those more kind of fun players on the ball, and apparently his attitude in Bayern is he's been upset at not being picked to play. So I wouldn't do that. I know Liverpool's been linked to him as well. I don't think that works out for Liverpool either. And then Anthony can be hit and miss, and I just think the planning of the squad has been poor and not really well thought out. But they're still and they did get third last season, but they're still it feels like they've maybe achieved a high mark, but I don't really know. And then we'll move on to Brighton and Wolves. Brighton go on to win 4-1, goals from Matoma, Estupian, and in the second half, it was only 1-0 in the first half, to be fair. And then Estupian in the second half, and then basically in like 3 minutes, Sully Marsh, and then Sully Marsh again, and then Wang was able to get the one for Wolves. This game is not what the scoreline suggests. The first half, I thought was really, really even. I thought Wolves actually did have maybe even the better of the opportunities. It was similar to what we saw last week, where they were able to get in on goal relatively easily. They were able to. It seemed like Brighton were actually somewhat vulnerable a little bit with Pascal Gross and Billy Gilmore, at least in my opinion. And they were able to. Wolves were just kind of run past them. It looked like Brighton were a little bit vulnerable, a little defensively. James Milner, I didn't think necessarily had a good game. There were a couple of times where Ait Nouri was able to get behind him and had a couple chances to finish. And just every time, Wolves did everything well except the finish. They couldn't buy a finish. And then in the second half, Wolves completely forgot how to just mark open runners completely. And Brighton just completely ate them up in the second half. So, again, 2 ways to kind of look at it. I made the mistake last week of kind of praising Wolves and Everton by how they looked with the ball and offensively. They're fun and creative. I didn't take into account how vulnerable they can be defensively, and when we get to Everton, it's kind of the same thing. They just the back line is going to give them issues all year, and it seems that Wolves. I don't really know what you can do other than try new personnel as well, because it wasn't just one player that wasn't switched on. For, for the for the Marsh goal, for the Estopian goal and Marsh goals, it's you had at Nori being switched off. You had Mateus Nunes not tracking runners, so he ended up getting a red card, so he's not going to be used anyways. For the next week, you had Semedo just not following a runner. Uh, and you had Craig Dawson. Craig Dawson was kind of getting caught. So there's a lot of going forward. They're a lot of fun, but there's a lot of work for Gary O'Neill to do. And it's funny because one note I had was it was a chance to exact a little revenge because they had an embarrassing 6-0 loss to this team last May, and it was slightly better, but only only by a little bit because Brighton did kind of make a statement in the second half. Uh, and to get to a couple of goals because Wolves, yeah, because Wolves had a chance with Fabio Silva. I mean, it's offsides, but it didn't seem like Brighton were nearly as much of a threat. There was maybe a decent chance by I think Matoma 1v1. It was a good recovery by Dawson. But I think they got the first goal in the 17th minute. I don't really have a lot of chances for Brighton before that. But then we get to the Matoma goal, and this is an unreal goal. Matoma does a bit what Wolves were doing to Man United, but he has the finish here because he just runs past four Wolves players en route to the goal. Burns Semedo here. This is goal of the month secured, unless people downgrade it because of how bad Wolves were defensively in the second half. But yeah, the only time it's similar to what Son scored a goal like this versus Burnley a couple years ago, where Son did it like from further out, but Matoma gets the ball on the wing and just he's maybe, I don't know, 40 yards from goal, and he just dribbles all the way through like 4 or 5 players, runs into the box, and then finishes the chance, easily. And then there's a big play, by Webster to kind of stick a leg out and stop a ball being played into a box where Wolves maybe had a free player making a run. So there was a chance there, and then there was a chance for Cunha, to get involved where he creates a really good danger moment for Fabio Silva. Plays in the good ball in, and Silva just can't finish. He's 1v1 with the keeper and can't finish. He's got to do better here. He draws a PK, and then there's another chance for Mateus Nunes to get in behind and get in the box, but can't finish again. But another thing too was Wolves were playing a risky game because Semedo and Dawson obviously can't handle Matoma 1v1 as we've seen, and Wolves weren't really giving a lot of cover. Mateus Nunes or Neto needed to do better to recognize this, and they didn't. And then Aït was in on goal and he shot it over the bar, but and it's an incredible move in the buildup. Mateus Nunes can be really fun on the ball. To be fair, because he plays a great ball to find Aït, and then there's a clever give and go to give it to Fabio Silva, and then Aït gets the ball in behind James Milner, and it's 1v1 with the keeper, and he hits the effort over the goal. So at halftime thoughts, I was actually watching this game live. I wasn't watching the Liverpool game, and then I saw Salah had missed a PK, so I had to switch over. I missed all the fun stuff happen in the second half because I switched over to the Liverpool game. But Brighton, I thought, did seem a little bit vulnerable. They're not, obviously not as big in the middle as they were last season, and yeah, at least in the or the biggest of a threat, for their second phase. So it seems like Brighton are going to have to maybe go direct a little bit more. But it seems like they've got the attacking players to do that, so maybe that won't really bother them. It seemed like Wolves were baiting Brighton to play passes to the wing, so they were closing off the middle, and so they were going out wide, and Wolves were somewhat in the first half doing a good job to close that off. And there wasn't really a whole lot of penetration. I did feel like uh, they're threatened when they get into the team's final third, but Wolves were doing a decent job. At least, they were desperate. They had some dives, they had some tackles, to stop Brighton, and just seemed that we didn't see. Personally watching this game live, I did not see the explosion that happened in the second half, and it happened early because Stupian gets this goal in like the second minute of the second half. So he finishes a cutback cross from Matoma, but the move comes from Solly Marsh, where Brighton are passing from the middle, and Gross is under pressure. He finds Marsh with Aït sitting off him, and then March just kind of takes a touch and floats an awesome ball over the top that finds Danny Welbeck, making a run in behind Wolves. But this is, and then Welbeck's shot is kind of parried to Matoma, and then Matoma kind of does cut back. But this is like a quarterback ball from Sully Marsh. He's releasing the ball before the receiver makes his break or cut kind of thing. This is really good by Marsh. And another thing is it's poor by Mateus Nunes, who allows the Stupian to jog past him unmarked. So this is the first one. I mean, this is his guy. Semedo has shifted over to stop Welbeck, and leaving Matoma unmarked as well. So Wolves basically are undone here because they maybe get lucky by Welbeck going for goal and not squaring a ball to Matoma for a free goal. It's also poor by Max Kilman being really far behind Welbeck after the pass. So Max Kilman shows that he can be got at a little bit. He falls for Welbeck to kind of be a little bit out of position, and Welbeck baits him, and then a little ball over the top, and he's in. Uh, and it's just that little pass by Marsh just it combusted Wolves' back line, and we saw that for the other goals as well. So the third one is scored by Marsh, so he was able to create the second goal, and the third one comes just a couple minutes later, where it's not much better from Wolves' point of view. Neto has the ball taken off him. Semedo is high upfield in no man's land. And Ciso then kind of like fakes a run towards the ball, only to spin around Dawson and to run behind him. And that's when Billy Gilmore, plays a loose ball or runs to a loose ball, and then sees Enciso doing that, and then plays a ball to find Enciso. It's a great ball by Billy Gilmore. Uh, And obviously, it's a problem because Semedo is quote unquote the fullback, and he's all the way upfield. He's taken out by the pass, and Ciso is behind Dawson, so there's literally no one other than Max Kilman. Max Kilman has to run over, uh, and Ciso just kind of waits for Marsh to make the run into the box, and Marsh is able to just beat Ait Nori just in a sprint. And I don't maybe Ait Nori didn't think Marsh could do this to him, but Ciso just kind of plays the ball into the box, and Marsh is able to finish it. And then it's kind of a similar thing for the second goal, for fourth goal as well, because it's very similar. Like a Welbeck gets onto a loose ball after Brighton kind of poach it off Wolves. He plays it out wide to Enciso, who isn't marked, and then Enciso crosses the ball across the 6 yard area. Very similar again, and then Marsh is able to he's able to beat everyone to the ball again. This time it's Semedo. And what's funny is Enciso gets 2 assists here, one on the left hand side, one on the right hand side. Uh, Kind of doing the exact same ball, and Marsh is able to score 2 kind of similar goals because again he's able to just run past everyone that Wolves just aren't able to mark, and so and then we get to I mean Wolves were able to get a fourth goal by Wang. Mateus Nunes Cunha missed an earlier header, and then Wang was at least able to convert this on a corner kick, but and then Mateus Nunes actually got sent off for something really stupid, but oh, yeah, it's another game where it's weirdly I thought Wolves were in good shape, and then Brighton really felt vulnerable out of possession, and then just the second half happened, and Brighton blitzkrieged them. Uh, a little bit repeating what they did last May, led by Stupin and Sully Marsh and Enciso. And the stats will show it was a relatively even game. So it's another it's stats don't always kind of show everything. Uh, just because the way the first half played out, I did not see the second half coming the way this was, and it's maybe I don't know if that's something for Wolves fans to kind of hold on to that they're close to being legit competitive here, or it's absolutely dreadful because the issues are more likely a player personnel than necessarily a tactical problem at the back end. And that's not an easy fix. I mean, the XG was Wolves 2.1 to Brighton 2.2. Wolves had 16 shots and 4 on target. Brighton was 16 shots and 3 on target. 4 big chances for Wolves, 5 big chances for Brighton. So going forward, it relatively uh, was even. I mean, possession, I think 46% for Wolves, Brighton 54. Wolves with 389 passing, Brighton was 486, 88% accuracy. And then Wolves had 24 of the 35 dribbles succeeded, that's a high number. That's bonkers. I mean, Wolves are very fun when they get the ball. They like taking chances. They like taking players on. They like running with the ball, and they're good with it. It's just obviously the finishing is missing, but another thing too at the back, it's simple stuff of knowing when to mark a runner, and staying in front of him. Uh, you can't be switched off like that for an entire half by your entire back line essentially, and that is I don't know what Neil can do to them other than tell them not to do that, and maybe they take the lesson or not. With Brighton, Sully Marsh has got 3 goals now in 2 games, and everyone thinks of Mitoma and Asiso, maybe Ferguson or Pedro, and maybe even a Dengra now, and you forget sometimes you forget about Sully Marsh. At least I have, and no, he's there, and he's very good at just kind of recognizing when to make his runs. He showed last year he has goals on him. Um, he made some runs to get into the box, and I didn't know he had that kind of pace to him, to be honest. And these were 2 terrific goals, and they were scored because of his desire to get into the box and make those runs. And I do think Brighton are a little bit vulnerable, at least defensively. At least obviously not having Casado is going to show up, though it looks like they've maybe addressed that. But Billy Gilmore on the ball is lights out special. It's funny that Brighton got him from Chelsea for like a pack of graham crackers. But I mean, Brighton. I do think Brighton were better moving the ball than versus Luton Town, and he was a big reason why. I mean, 97% pass accuracy, 83 touches. He lost the ball 6 times for all those touches, and then Gross is good on the ball as well, 91% accuracy. It's just out of possession is their problem. And then Cisse played like 3 minutes last week, and all he did is come on this week and create 2 assists, and one from the left wing, one from the right wing, and maybe the only negative is maybe he picked up a knock, but and then Mitoma's goal was unreal. So there's not a whole lot of negatives. Maybe the one is out of possession. They did somewhat look vulnerable. I mean, combined, Billy Gilmore and Gross were dribbled past 6 times. But it does look like they're about to bring in someone like, Carlos Balba of Lille, and, they're linked to, a youngster, Fabricio, Diaz, who captained, Uruguay at the, summer's, U20 World Cup. Uruguay ended up winning, and he captained them. And then, they're really linked to maybe Arsenal's Sambi Lokanga, which I've seen, which is weird. But it's not all roses for Brighton. Wolves did have an XG over 2, versus them, and I don't think James Milner is particularly good for them, to be honest. So there's still some holes. But if what's weird is, and they've won the first 2 games scoring 4 goals, but it does feel like they have to play a little bit differently than they did last year, and it's crazy because Chelsea has basically given Brighton 220 million for Casado, Marc Cucurella, Sanchez, and Graham Potter's scouting staff, and maybe if it's hard for me not to, draw a similar contrast or similar comparison to when, Barcelona gave Liverpool all that money for just Coutinho and what Liverpool were able to do with it. Chelsea have given Brighton a chance to kinda do something similar. I don't know if they're gonna win the league or anything, but Brighton have a lot of money to play with, and their squad is already really good. So, if I know they like usually kind of scouting a certain player and developing them, that way they can get them on friendly contracts. If you're gonna go out to get stars already kind of made, they're gonna want star money. So I don't necessarily know if Brighton as a club can necessarily do that, but maybe there'll be some kind of players that want to that see what De Zerbi's building and want to take part in that. I don't really know. Uh, and then, so that's Brighton. Not a ton of negatives to say, obviously. He won 2 goals and won 2 games and scored 8 goals in those 2 games. And then with Wolves, it's not the attacking play that's an issue. Though Cunha needs to score some of these. He's close to announcing himself. I think he's close to getting multiple goals and an assist in one of these games. But the negatives is I don't know how you can fix that defensively. Obviously, you're not going to be without Mateus Nunes with that red card, and it's good news, bad news. I guess in some respect, good news they've had 39 shots in the first 2 games. Their attacking play is creating chance after chance, and first Man United and Brighton are two teams you expect to be in the top 10. So this isn't really their competition. They've been competitive in that respect. Obviously, the bad is not converting them, and then the worst is being just so bad defensively, at least in that second game. So a bit of a reality check, but and yeah, I don't. They do have a Toddy that can maybe come on for Dawson. I thought Dawson looked poor in this game. It's not just Dawson though. I mean, I guess you could use Bruno instead of Ait Nori, though. Yeah, I don't really know what Gary O'Neill can do. Semedo is also a really big problem, and I don't know what they can do about him either. So, anyways, and then we move on to Chelsea and West Ham. This game was a nice surprise because I was kind of I wasn't the only one. I think a lot of people were kind of talking Chelsea up after their Liverpool performance. The reason why it's friendly surprise is well they they beat Liverpool to Casado and then beat Liverpool to Roman Lavia and decided to basically just break all financial rules and just and then their fans at least online was really smug about it. So this was a nice little wake up call for them. He starts off with a goal from my guard and then Carly Chukwemeka is able to get them back. 1-1, and, maybe the one negative for Chelsea is or the real negative is it seems like they did lose, Carney, to a pretty bad, knee injury, and I didn't necessarily think he was great versus Liverpool. I thought he was actually struggling, for them, but in this game, he was maybe their most important player. So losing him was pretty big, and they don't after, they've lost Nkuku as well, you don't really know who they can look at to be that kind of number 10 player other than maybe Conor Gallagher, I don't know. So it looks like they might even have to do some more player sales. And then, Chelsea maybe had the chance to maybe, kind of win the game away kind of comfortably. After Sterling had drawn a PK, and Enzo has a really poor PK. Areola is able to read it and dive and save. Maybe he even catches it. And then Antony in the second half gets West Ham to go 2-1 up. And then Paqueta at the very end is able to finish the PK with making a 3-1 with Casado coming on in the second half and not having a good debut, being a $115 man because it's his Val that creates the PK. So I think a lot of teams were Jekyll and Hyde from week 1 to week 2, and I was one of the ones that did praise Chelsea for how they looked with Liverpool, but I do think the one thing, maybe my saving grace here, was that allows me to maybe hedge, was I did include the caveat of Reece James. Reece James is so important to how Chelsea play, and I think more importantly, he's important when he misses games as well. And it's just his loss was massive. You didn't see anything near the same combination played down the right side. And Emerson was really struggling with just Sterling running at him. Imagine with Sterling and James being able to kind of play combinations with each other, because that's what they were able to do to Robinson last week. And it didn't seem like Marlo Gusto just was not offering nearly that. Marlo Gusto was almost kind of being, uh, eh, I don't wanna say almost like I don't wanna say a fullback, he was a fullback. He was very defensive minded. He you don't really see him going forward and trying to make, overlapping runs. I don't know if that because they were worried about Antonio over the top, where Thiago Silva wasn't able to handle that. I can't say, but it did seem like Chelsea were missing a little bit of that, and it showed. It showed big time. And then with West Ham were able to stay in the game and able to force Chelsea into a lot of a pretty big sloppy mistake, that led to the goal to get them the lead, and then they defended brilliantly in their blocks, blocking off the crosses into their attempt. I think Chelsea had 34 crosses, which shows that they were not able to be creative, to break down that deep block. And I thought they did it well to put Chelsea under pressure on the ball, at least when they got the ball in their own end of the field. Like, they weren't really pressing Chelsea until Chelsea would get the ball into the final third, and that's when they were trying to cause Chelsea some issues. And the missed PK probably was the moment of the match. But to touch on Chelsea, there Pochettino did something weird. So I maybe missing Reece James kind of forced this, but it was strange because the back four was Malo Gusto, Diazy, Thiago Silva, and then Colwell was like the left back. And then, so it was Enzo and then Colin Gallagher. And the way the shape lined up is Enzo was the more further forward midfielder. Conor Gallagher was the deepmost defensive midfielder, which is not something you really expect. And then it was Sterling, Carney, and then Chilwell. Chilwell was almost like a left winger, not really a defensive guy. So I thought that was kind of weird. And then Jackson ahead. Uh, and I thought Jackson for the most part actually had a pretty good game. He was able to make some runs. He was able to draw a couple draw a cheap yellow card that ended up actually getting a guard in trouble in the second half. Actually, he got a guard twice, because a guard actually went down and brought him down, and so that ended up leading him to be sent off. But I thought Jackson was also pretty good at just it seems he's not necessarily a number 9. He's more of a guy that can make runs into channels. So that can be really good. To he can create some space for others to operate in. But if Jackson gets the ball on the wing, who's he supposed to cross the ball into? And I think we saw that happen a couple of times. So it seems the makeup of the Chelsea team is still a little off to me. Um, and so there is what's funny is enough. So we get to the game. What's funny enough is West Ham there was a theme here where anytime West Ham scored, they almost gave like a preview of what they were capable of doing before actually getting the goal. So there were a couple of chances where Chelsea had a mulligan attempt essentially, and they didn't heat it. So West Ham forced Sanchez to make a save after a corner kick. So the first sign of James Ward-Prowse shows up here, and it'll show up, I guess, on corner deliveries. And he's already West Ham were already one of the best set piece teams in the league already, and he's joined them. And so one for already their first corner kick in like the 4th minute of the game, and Antonio wins the header, and he forces a save. And so West Ham have shown that they can be threatening. And then we get to a guard scoring a couple minutes later, where yeah, it's another really good delivery by Ward Prowse. It's kind of the same kind of kick, the same kind of delivery, and a guard just jumps over Conor Gallagher and Carly Chukwuemeka here. Uh, but then after that, West Ham get the goal, and then West Ham didn't really do a ton after that. I mean, they really were kind of defending for their lives. They only had Antonio to really, any kind of outlet. Bowen was actually doing a whole lot of defensive work this game, and so we have Chelsea having a chance where Enzo picks out Jackson, making a really good run, and he nearly draws a PK. To be honest, Jackson is judged offsides. If that call doesn't happen, and this goes to VAR, I think Jackson actually does draw the PK, and it's really tight. Maybe Jackson was offside by his shoulder. But it's a fantastic ball by Enzo. Enzo missed the PK, and that's all anyone's really going to talk about. Enzo was terrific in this game as well. I think he had 4 key passes. He's one of the more progressive passers in the league, and he doesn't really lose the ball. It's just yeah, obviously he needs to work on his PK technique. Um, and then we have a chance here where Jackson messes up a header. I feel like it's harsh because Jackson is kind of stretching for this, but I can't tell if he either jumped too early or Chilwell just hit this over his head. But Jackson's in a good spot. The cross comes in, and he maybe mistimes his jump or what. But he's stretching, and he can't actually get the header down. So the ball goes over the net, and then we get to the goal scored by Kwane Chukwuemeka, and he does wonderful to freeze Suchek and create space for himself to get the shot off. But before this, it comes from Jackson working really hard to win the ball back, and then doing well to get behind Zuma to try a cross. It's blocked off, and then from there, Chelsea restart the attack high in West Ham's into the field, and that's kind of where the goal really does come from. And West Ham do have a couple chances to clear this. The first one is maybe Basuma, where he's able to block Chilwell's first cross into the box, but it falls right to Kwane's feet, and then Kwane freezes Suchek. And then Sterling draws the PK, and it's a really lazy challenge by Suchek, and then Enzo hits a weak PK, and I do think it was maybe more moment of the game, not just because Chelsea had a chance to go ahead, and that would have forced West Ham to actually go press them a little bit, and Chelsea would have been able to play a little keep away, and that would have actually created some spaces for Jackson to make some more runs for himself in the second half. But another thing too was Sterling was having a lot of success, making these runs and terrorizing West Ham's team. So he's able to draw the PK here, and that would have created some more spaces for Sterling to have some fun in. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily go. So West Ham still had control of the game. Chelsea started poor, but they grew into the game. For halftime notes, Chelsea's pace in the attack, I did think was giving West Ham fits. And again, Emerson versus Sterling, you can only imagine what would have happened if Reece James would have been able to help out, and that maybe Reece James would have helped out in some of their crossing too. 37 crosses or whatever it was, not many actually led to successful attempts. So, and I do think Jackson was causing some issues with his aggressive runs, but you look at the Chelsea team and you wonder where actually are the goals going to come from. So that'll be something to touch on in the second half. And then you have a West Ham chance that in the second half that gives again Chelsea a bit of a warning sign. So Saeed Ben Rama, kind of again it gets free, and so what happens is Thiago Silva is baited and played out of position, and so a ball is kicked over the top to him and Diazy, and Ben Rama is able to take Sanchez on 1v1 and gets the chip effort wrong. But the reason why I say that is Diazy looks like he's uncomfortable defending with the ball over the top, and so does Thiago Silva. And so what happens a couple minutes later is Antonio is able to make it count. So again, Thiago has a chance to handle this easily, but Benrahma is able to beat him to a sprint and kick a ball away from him. So Thiago has left his kind of defensive area to go into midfield to try to win a 50-50 ball, and Thiago misses. And so what happens is he's played out the play. And then Chelsea, I think Diazy gets the ball and he tries to clear the ball away. And what he does is he kicks it right at James Ward-Prowse's boot. And Ward-Prowse does a really good job to control it and then floats a very good ball over the top that finds Antonio, who's guarded by Diazy and Colwell. Uh, this is, I mentioned how James Ward-Prowse is maybe going to only be brought for set pieces. This is a fantastic open play by Ward-Prowse. It's a really good ball over the top. And Antonio does a really good job to control it. But another thing too is he just bullies Colwell 1v1. And then he has Diazy with him, and Diazy looks almost scared to engage him. And what happens is because he doesn't do that, Antonio is able to find a little space for a shot, and he just rifles this into the far corner. I think Sanchez maybe gets a hand to it, but this is a rifle. I can't really blame Sanchez. But another thing too is Thiago would have maybe done better here. He would have recognized, hey, to at least somewhat engage in Antonio, don't allow him that kind of shot, and he's played out of the play. And looking back, I think that is one of the bigger people are going to focus on their attack. Obviously, who's going to score their goals in defense? If they're going to play, Chelsea's going to play in a back two or back four with Thiago Silva. I think they're going to be vulnerable every single game because of this. And it's it's unfortunate Liverpool weren't able to actually punish that. And then in the second half, Thiago Caicedo did come on for his debut, and it's a horror debut. Sloppy in possession, giving the ball away, committing a number of bad fouls, and once West Ham actually went down on a man, all they were looking for is someone to foul them, so they could somewhat just kind of get a breathe on the well, get a breather without having to to do constant defending. And Casado was probably obliged, probably the most willing player to fall for that. Because he did a number of fouls. He didn't look he looked rusty. I think they said he hadn't had a preseason with Brighton, so that kind of shows, I guess. And so yeah, and maybe it'll take some time for him to kind of get used to Chelsea. And what's funny enough is Edson Alvarez came on for West Ham, maybe their Declan Rice kind of a replacement, signed for much less, and he had a much better debut. I'm not going to say that Alvarez is going to be a better player than Casado, but at least in this game he was, because he, unlike Casado, he had a couple well time challenges to block crosses and win the ball back. It's fair to say as well that Casado has come in as a defensive minded midfielder to basically help when someone's like building possession for the back because he's really good in possession, but also win the ball back. But when you're chasing a goal and against a team that's playing down a man, a defensive minded midfielder isn't really going to help you out that much. So it's a weird game for Casado to come into. And then another thing too is Mason Bristow comes on for Chelsea or Burstow, and $1 billion has been spent to create this Chelsea squad. And this is the kind of depth you have when you need to score a goal chasing a game versus a 10-man team is a youngster Mason Burstow. And so the way the money has been spent has been weird. And some of the finishing was cringe as well. Mudryk came on and got into a couple good areas, but screwed up on every single finish. And then we have a West Ham chance by a Casado mistake that leads to a four nails chance. So this is close to the end of the game. It's still only a one goal lead, 1 goal game, and Casado is super sloppy with the ball and basically allows Fornells to get 1v1 with Sanchez, and he messes up. But again, so Sanchez makes a save, and Casado is saved by that, and then he's not really saved that long because right after Madueke has a shot that deflects that all nearly wrong foots Areola. The West Ham get the important PK to go up a 3-1 and basically close the game off. So maybe the Madueke deflection chance actually goes past Areola, and this game actually ends 2-2, or maybe people are thinking about maybe the narrative is different. Areola was player of the game in that respect. Obviously, not only the PK save, he was fantastic in the save as well. And then West Ham do go on to win 3-1 with Paqueta's PK, and it's caused by Paqueta sending Paqueta basically. Let's see. He gets the ball, I think, from Emerson, and what he does is he's really clever. He does like a back heel that maybe freezes Chelsea. They're not expecting that, and that's basically what creates the goal. That allows Emerson to get into the danger area, to get behind everyone, and then Casado sticks the leg out and breaks him down. And it's big for Paqueta because he was in the news recently for a couple of things. Not only for Man City eyeing him, but maybe for doing some violation via sports betting or fixing. So, and that's what Tony got in trouble for. So we have to maybe follow that. But yeah, I mean there are two examples, two storylines for both team. I mean for Chelsea, it's a good example that money can buy you multiple chances to succeed, but not necessarily buy success and wins itself. I mean Chelsea's record signing in February missed their PK, and the record signing in the summer conceded a PK. Uh, and teams can lose. It's not the end of the world, but I think the way Chelsea looked in the second half, I do think is worrying. And I'll get to that later. But maybe the most positive is Reece James is going to miss that many games. Though the other flip side of that is he has started to miss more and more games as his career has gone on. Now they look entirely different without him. To be said, but $1 billion has been spent to make the squad up, and you're relying on Mason Burstow to rescue a point when you're up a man. Uh, it's just another. How is a squad still filled with that many holes? It's weird, and it's funny because Chelsea put down a man and Pochettino brings on a defensive midfielder whose trade is to again to kind of bring the ball back. And whilst West Ham at that point were fine to just kind of boot it away, so that didn't really Chelsea will win it. Anyone on Chelsea was able to do that. Uh, and for West Ham, I think it's very fitting who's responsible for their goals. Ward-Prowse come in with 2 assists. Ward-Prowse is going to be a fantastic signing for them. It's interesting to see him kind of paired with Edson Alvarez. Uh, and Antonio getting the thunderstrike to go in, and then the Paqueta PK. I mean the stats though do favor Chelsea. I mean West Ham 1.8, to Chelsea's 2.4. Obviously, the red card, benefits a little bit there. But what's weird is Chelsea only had 6 shots, the same as West Ham, in the second half when they were up a man. So Chelsea actually played better in the first half when West Ham were actually up a man. I mean, when West Ham, when both teams had 11. I think that was interesting. Possession's probably what you would expect. Passing is probably what you would expect. 630 with West Ham being down a man, they're not going to be able to press. But the 34 crosses by Chelsea, I think, was an eye opener as well. And I will start on Chelsea. Usually, I start with the team that won, but there's too much to kind of get into. Uh, Positives, I think, are Sterling looks like the Sterling of old, so that's good. If Chelsea could just find a poacher in the box, Sterling's going to be able to create a lot of chances for him. Jackson doesn't seem to be a poacher. Jackson's been bright for them, and he's doing everything but the finishing, and but he's not recognizing where the runs are in the back. He's doing good to scare back lines. He's able to run into channels, but he's not finishing. And it's interesting because it's funny. Last year, someone like Yalf. Another thing is you're missing kind of a creative. You're missing a 10, and it feels like Gal Felix maybe works a little bit better now because Jackson would have been able to kind of make those runs in a head, where Felix would be able to operate a little bit better, but they don't have that now. And obviously, Enzo missed the PK. It is what it is, but his numbers are jarring. 120 plus touches a game, 100 passes conceded or completed in both games, 90% accuracy in both games. He doesn't really go backwards either. He's a forward-minded thinker. Um, but there are a lot of concerns, and the lineup is weird. Playing Ben Chilwell the way they've been playing, I think it was weird. Playing Conor Gallagher as the deepest midfielder, I think it was weird. He played okay versus Liverpool, but I don't. He's an attack-minded midfielder, and he actually he can score some goals for them. So I think they maybe made a mistake on not trying, especially when they went up a man. They had that advantage. Why didn't you try him as a 10? That was a bit weird. Instead, they kind of hooked him. Um, and the back line, and just Thiago Silva and Diaz hasn't done really that great in these 2 games, or at least Diaz hasn't. It's funny, Diaz scored with Liverpool, but I thought Luis Diaz was eating him up and having him for dessert. So Diaz hasn't really struggled to adapt so far. And then for the attackers, who is going to score for them? It doesn't. It seems like Mudryk has lost for confidence. Unfortunate for him. Maybe a run of games will get that out of him. I do think he looks pretty good. In the again he's is worth a different competition. In the U20 Euros, but he did look he looks and maybe it is just kind of a confidence thing with him. I can't say. I do think it was weird how Ben Chilwell was tried almost as an attacking left winger, where I don't necessarily know if Ian Matson can score goals for them, but it feels like he can maybe offer a little bit more creative wise. And then, when you look at who's going to score some goals for them, they do have Amanda Broja still at the club. But another thing too is a lot of their play forward is reliant on Jackson making these runs, and it feels like they're a Jackson hamstring away from really struggling this season. So the point I want to get to is they've spent 260-ish million or they spent 200 million for 2 defensive-minded midfielders, in Casado and Lavia. And knowing the center back options are what they are. Colwell is good, but I think Diaz is kind of hit and miss. We have to wait and see on him. But Silva is 38 years old or 39, and he looks it. Fofana is out. Badiashile is out injured. They knew what they had defensive issues, and they didn't go back and they didn't really go into the market addressing that. They also knew about Nkunku's situation before they spent 200 million for 2 defensive midfielders in Casado and Lavia. And on top of that, that was before spending 60 million combined for Andre Santos and Leslie Ugu Chugwa. So it's crazy because they sold Pulisic for 24 million, Mason Mount for 70 million, Kai Havertz for 65-ish million. So that comes out to like 160-ish million. Well, we'll just put it that way. They could have bought Victor Osimhen from Napoli, who I think they quoted they did something to troll a Saudi club looking at him as 130 million. You could have brought in Victor Osimhen instead of doing what they've done. And Osimhen would have Osimhen with someone like Jackson. Jackson, making runs with Osimhen. That would have been a very, very interesting attack-minded team. And you could still find ways to create with that. But I don't know what they can necessarily do because it looks like they've lost their goal scorer, Kali Chukwuemeka, who's like their number 10. So maybe they look for someone like Kudus. I mentioned Cherky last season or last week. Maybe they can do something with him. But what's weird is anyone that's joining Chelsea has to know that one, Chelsea do contracts weird, so you're going to be stuck here for like 8 years. But two, you're joining a team that probably is going to play in Cuckoo in the spot that you like playing at when he returns. This is only going to be a short term thing, so I don't necessarily know how they're going to be able to lure people into that. And another thing too is Chelsea have spent all this money, and I don't think anyone has picked them to win either the champ, either to win the league or to even make Champions League. Maybe the outside chance of Champions League. And when you spend all that money, that should be the target. So I feel like no one respects Chelsea right now, even regardless of the amount of money that they've spent, and that's a telling idea as well. And so yeah, because you have Enzo Casado and Lavia to win you the ball back, but who do you give it to? Who's going to score your goals? So there's issues there. And then for West Ham, it's interesting because I mentioned Kudus. It seems like they're linked to Kudus as well. It seems like the Brighton deal didn't necessarily fall through, and it looks like their Paqueta is maybe being investigated at for what I said. That could be a storyline to follow because Paqueta has been really good for them. He's he's just well, he's not the only he's not going to just get the ball and just kind of hoof it. He'll try to keep it on a little bit. He can be forward minded. Um, he didn't necessarily have his best game. He was outnumbered in duels, but he was also he looked absolutely spent and exhausted working without the ball, and he did a really good job to do that. That's not an easy thing to do. So yeah, I do think losing him would be crushing. But the positives are Edson Alvarez and Ward Prowse have come in. West Ham were better in possession, better passing with Ward Prowse. I've immediately been Suchek. Suchek, gives the penalty to Sterling, and I think his legs have been kind of spent. Um, and so that is interesting. Going to be an interesting midfield to maybe see. I don't necessarily think Rice. They've replaced Rice with that, but maybe they'll just be a little bit different. And then with Antonio is a weird player because I spoke about Bowen last week, and he's been the other side of that kind of three-headed dragon that's been responsible for West Ham's run of success the last few years. Obviously, Rice being the other, and he's gone. But his all-around game is immense, and it really helps someone like West Ham, who because they don't have a lot of kick on the game, and the few times they are able to get the ball, they use him as an outlet sometimes to just kind of just advance the ball upfield, and he's really good at winning 50-50 balls. He's really good at holding on to the ball when being pressed, and he allows West Ham to get upfield sometimes and just kind of keep it. And just when you're defending a whole lot, that can be everything. But it's and when you're only playing with like one striker, sometimes like that hold up play is a must, especially when you're playing down a man. Just having that outlet is everything, and being able to just he's so physical. He sometimes can draw fouls. Um, so he fits exactly the way that they like playing. But another thing too is he can make these runs into space. He's not just this big physical guy. He can he can make runs on the back of a shoulder on a defender. So he can help with West Ham's counter setup as well. And sometimes the only thing lacking is maybe his fitness, or he doesn't always have the best finish on him. But he looked fit in a way that I haven't really seen in a while. I remember last year versus Man City in that opener. We did a show where I talked to Rex and I said he looked really spent. He looked like he had heavy legs, and I think he went all last season only scoring 5 goals. And you can imagine that because the last few seasons, he's been asked to do all of what I said and lead their attack and get them through both in the league and in Europe. And I think it's possible his legs were absolutely drained and spent last year. And maybe he's had a preseason to recover a little bit, and he looked really good. So obviously that's going to be a benefit for West Ham. Um, and so that's kind of it. Let's see. And maybe the last thing is it does seem like they may be linked to El Nesri. I mentioned him for Sevilla, and what's funny is he's like Ronaldo when he jumps. So like Cristiano Ronaldo, he towers in the air, and it's funny. You think of like Ward Prowse on a corner kick, and someone like El Nesri being able to get on the end of it. That would certainly be interesting. But Only links I think I saw, so we'll have to see. And then we'll move on to Liverpool and Bournemouth. Liverpool will go on to win 3-1 in an absolute wild game in a way I was not expecting, and I don't want to really experience any more of these kind of games, to be honest. Because the first goal came from Semedo in like the first like 3 minutes. Then again, I wasn't watching at this point. I was watching Brighton and Wolves. I was recording the Liverpool game, and then Luis Diaz is able to make amends, get it 1-1, and then Salah is able to make it a 2-1. He gets a PK and he actually misses, or Sloboshai, I guess, buys a PK. Salah misses the PK. And that's gonna be a bit of a theme with him recently. And then Jota, after Liverpool went down a man with a really bad call on Lex McAllister, which I'll get to, is able to make it a 3-1, and then Liverpool were able to kill out the game. Um, the big thing with the Jota goal is it's helped by Sloboshai getting the ball in the top of the box and having a really well hit low strike that the keeper can only parry it, and that's where Jota's able to clean it up. And the reason I say this is Liverpool just have not had this kind of player for so long. Henderson tries this. I think he's heading it into the stands. If Keita tries this, I think it'd go in out of bounds for a goal kick. Because there was similar. There was a chance for Keita to do something like this in the Champions League final, and he just whiffed it. Just they've been missing this kind of player with this kind of strike ability, and they might finally have it. And it's not just that. Sloboshai whole this entire game was fantastic. This game. Uh, and I mean, the storylines was, Bournemouth were coming to the place where they lost the first game 9-0 last year, and then they lost their manager and got Gary O'Neill, and then they came back and beat Liverpool at their own ground last February. So it was a bit of a rubber match between the two sides, and then the McAllister red was absolutely inexcusable, which I'll get to. Uh, Liverpool's shape was a little bit different. I mean, it started off with Trent kind of being inverted and Robinson in the back three, and then it ended up. I think they ended up changing that a little bit because really the first goal happens because Trent's trying to get the ball in midfield. It's kind of a bad pass by Virgil van Dijk, but again, Trent needs to do better at controlling this. And a heavy touch actually allows Solanke to get the ball, and he plays in Semedo, and they score in the first like 3 minutes. And then after that, you actually did see Trent getting the ball out wide a little bit more. And I think some of the Liverpool's best moments actually came. Szoboszlai was kind of playing a little bit more centrally. That was allowing Trent to play a little bit more, a little more into as a fullback, little more out on the wing. And the first goal that came to Luis Diaz really comes from Trent getting the ball on the wing and crossing the ball in. Jota has really good touch, and then Jota passes it to Diaz, and Diaz has an insane touch himself to kind of flick it and then do a bit of a somersault finish, which is awesome. But that goal came from Trent getting the ball from the wing and then having a really good ball from there. Not necessarily him playing in the middle. And we saw later for the Salah PK that would happened. Trent again he got the ball on the wing and did a really nice ball over the top that went to Sloboshai that was playing ahead of him. That allowed Salah to play more centrally, and then Sloboshai was able to buy the PK. It's kind of cheap, but it is what it is. I think there is contact, but I really liked that shape a lot better. I also thought Robinson played a lot better this game as well. He didn't necessarily bomb forward, recklessly. It seemed like he was in much better shape defensively, and he actually helped out Virgil van Dijk in a couple of these chances. So, I mean, Allison did still have to do some work here, so it's not necessarily too great. I thought, before even the red card, I thought Alexis McAllister actually got at a couple of times. I thought last week versus Chelsea, I didn't think McAllister did a poor job playing as a defensive-minded midfielder. In this game, I do think that was a bit of an issue. I do think Bournemouth actually saw that he was a little bit vulnerable, and they were able to get behind him a little bit, and it led to a couple chances. So I do think it's still kind of a work in progress, to be honest. And with Bournemouth, it's you may be upset about how weirdly after Liverpool went down a man, uh, to be honest, like Bournemouth weren't really able to take control of the game. So that can maybe be something to look at. I do think at least some positive is Max Aarons and Kirkritz do look to be pretty good signings. It seems like they've improved at fullback. I mean, Semedo came on and got a pretty good goal, started over Brooks, and it looks like they've maybe signed Tyler Adams. So, Rothwell has the PK, but I don't necessarily think Rothwell is the issue himself. So I think Billing, it just isn't a midfielder. If you get someone else that can play in that midfield, either Tyler Adams or maybe it looks like they maybe signed Alex Scott as well, a player that I think played for Bristol, and maybe the idea is try them a little bit more. That way, you can play Billing a little bit further forward, and that'll make Bournemouth definitely uh, you know because Billing is like 6'3", Solanke is tall as well. That'll make them a little bit harder to at least, when it comes to second balls and whatnot, because I do think billing works better for them in a more advanced kind of state. But yeah, I mean, the game, Bournemouth did get the first goal, and then Liverpool were able to kind of get it back. I do think it's interesting how after the red card, Liverpool's shape changed. Klopp went to almost like a 4-4-1 formation, and I really did like it, to be honest, because like it felt like they got more control in the game. It didn't feel like they were trying this hoofball, 50-50, hero ball, nonsense. They were much more calm in their decision making. And to be honest, they still created a lot of looks. Not only did they score a goal, they had a couple chances to score multiple goals. They moved the ball really, really well. After they went down a man, so that's at least something to hold on to. And another thing too is we got to see. They made a signing over the week, and we got to see Indo come on, and for only having, I guess, being at the club for like I guess, I don't know, 24 hours or whatever it was. Uh, you can't really expect him to do a ton, and he did, get an interception, and that actually did lead to a Liverpool chance. I do think he doesn't necessarily look as, at least in this game, he didn't seem to cover a lot of ground. So neither did Fabinho, to be fair, but it just comparing Endo to what maybe Lavia would have been able to do is a little disappointing. And I know there's talks that maybe Endo won't be the only player they bring in, but I do fear that that could be the case. So yeah, I mean, at least in the game, it's not totally what I expected. It's an incredible goal by Luis Diaz. And then the uh, the the PK with Salah is maybe probably an issue as well. But to get to the stats, Liverpool 3 xG, Bournemouth 1.2, Liverpool 26 shots and 10 on target, 4 big chances for Liverpool, but 3 big chances for Bournemouth. A couple of those came actually a little bit late, so that is worth saying as well. Allison did still have to work in this game. That's worth saying as well. But the passing was much better. 516, 86% accuracy, much better than what we saw. And the kind of take here is Liverpool have signed Endo, and I guess I'll hedge saying that tapping into like an older market for stopgaps maybe isn't the worst idea. Like the game is getting younger and younger, and so maybe the price for players like at a prime age range is getting harder to do, especially like if you're signing a player at a prime age. He's going to expect maybe a wage bill that's going to be in that kind of category as well, and that's I think the conspiracy side of me is I think that's the reason why they've lost out on Bellingham, Chouameni, and Casado, maybe even Lavia, is competing clubs have been able to offer higher weekly wages than what Liverpool have been able to do. So, and I do think they broke their wage structure to keep Salah. So there could be some of that. So maybe that's not the end of the world. I don't think it's necessarily ideal to go from Fabinho to Casado to Lavia to Endo. And the fee isn't cheap. I think it was 20-ish million for him. So I do think the idea is to try him as the main number six, the main guy to clean up in front of Virgil and Kanate. And I do think that can be a little risky. Apparently, he is really good in the air. I think he's 5'10", but he's really good for his aerials. So that could be something that could help out. I think I've seen he can play multiple positions. He can play he can maybe play left center back in a three maybe if that's what the situation requires. But I do think they need to do a little bit more. So because it really it reminds me a little bit of the Ben Davies and Ozan Kabak thing a couple of seasons ago when Liverpool were first in the table, and all they 3 of their center backs were injured out for the year essentially, and they brought in kind of this Ozan Kabak guy also from the Bundesliga, and he did not he did not work out. Ben Davis literally never saw the pitch. And then Arthur last season was similar as well. They knew they had midfield crisis, and then Jordan Henderson injured himself playing in Newcastle, and it's like the final day of the transfer window, and then all of a sudden they did a last ditch effort to get Arthur from loan, and Arthur I think played 15 minutes before like doing his hamstring in training, and he after having surgery we never saw him again. So it does feel like they've maybe papered over the cracks a little bit here. And I don't understand why you sold Fabinho if this was the idea. If you signed Indo and you still had Fabinho, I wouldn't necessarily be hating it that much, to be honest. But because I do think Fabinho was kind of getting overworked as well. So maybe this would have been a way to kind of, bring on off and on to kind of, spare the minutes. That would make sense a little bit. But I think they're going to go into the season with just Endo, and then it's like a 19-year-old Stefan Bacic, as your kind of CM options, I guess with McAllister as well, and then at the back it's Nat Phillips and Matt Gomez for center back depth. I do think that's a team that's closer to probably finishing seventh, sixth, or fifth than Champions League. But I could be wrong. But it just seems I don't know. I look at Arsenal playing Havertz in midfield. I look at Man City going to be really good defensively, but maybe without Kevin De Bruyne, there's an opportunity here. Salah is 31. He's not 27. Virgil van Dijk is not 27 anymore. Uh, you've brought in McAllister and Sloboslai and even Gakpo that can be really fun, going forward in more advanced roles. If you just had cover in midfield, you had someone that could put out fires by his own self, and I don't think they've been able to address that. So there's a little part of me that's a little underwhelmed, and the McAllister red, it's thankfully it's been overturned, but that is really rough. And then with Sloboslai, man of the match, and maybe, and he was good for Chelsea, but the reason why he looks good is he's tidy on the ball. He's got a slick touch, glides with it to go past players. It seems like he has a second gear, to sprint, and he makes good passing decisions. Like he showed he can be a little bit of a controller, but and he also he hasn't injured. He can recover on defense. He presses well to win the ball back. And in the final third, he's got a good shot on him, and it's awesome because he's wearing a Gerrard's number, and it feels like I just haven't seen a midfielder look like this since Gerrard has left. To be honest, even like even prime Gerrard, like towards the end, Gerrard was kind of playing more deep. Uh, but it's I think I saw he covered the most distance as well, so he's working tirelessly without the ball as well, and he creates the important goal, and he's got screamers in him. We'll probably see. So he's got Kevin De Bruyne in some of his game. To be honest, and I told Rex towards the end of last season, I think after a Champions League episode, I feared City or Newcastle were going to get him. To be honest, I saw him. I saw his chance creation last year for Leipzig, and it was up there. And I knew he had some screamers in him. And I remember he really impressed when he played England. When Hungary played England, and it's just it's crazy how Liverpool have actually ended up been the club to get him. So they've been good in that respect. And then with Jota is a really fun player to me because he's got a nose to where to be in the box. And he makes really good timed runs. But that said, he'll go the entire game misplaying almost every pass, making a mistake that'll just make you maddening. And then he'll end the game with a goal and assist, and you'll be like, whoa. Uh, and because he's doing that, I don't think we're seeing Darwin Núñez. So things are still chaotic. But and I do want to see maybe like I said, they're still vulnerable a little bit defensively. So maybe as long as and I don't necessarily think applying Indo to that instead changes that, but I'll have to see. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. But again, it is asking Virgil and Kanate to put out a lot of fires by themselves, the way that Klopp's been playing Trent and Robertson. Still a little worried about that, but and it does feel the squad is weak, but it is what it is. And then on with Bournemouth, I think in many respects they're unlucky. The Anthony goal, it started with Mark Antony or Anthony K scored a really goal in the first 50 seconds. And the only reason why it didn't count is because I think he was judged offsides by just a hair. That was also a mistake by Trent Alexander-Arnold. So they did start the game well. But I think with Bournemouth, the thing to touch on is they've done some excellent business this window. Tyler Adams, I do think, is joining the right club at a good moment. A lot of promising players around him, but I also think they're guys that he can beat out to be one of those center back partnerships. Uh, and another thing too is Alex Scott. Again, a U20 England star. Um, and I think I saw he's been compared to like a young Declan Rice, but I don't really think he's that kind of player. I think he's a lot more offensive minded when he gets the ball, but he does win it back. And he is quite good for his age. I think he has a knee injury now, but he's probably he lit it up last season for Bristol City, and he's aggressive. He's aggressive on the ball. He can not just carry with it. He's good eye for a pass. Good on the half turn as well. At least for his championship side. So we'll have to see. So maybe with the midfield improved, we'll see them do better at keeping on to the ball a little bit, and that'll allow them to hurt teams, pressing them because I think Liverpool's press really did get the better of Bournemouth in the second half, and they have attacking outlets to hurt teams if their midfielders can keep on to the ball. Uh, because they have Wadatara and Tavernier to add to this when they get healthy as well. So a lot of good things to look at for Bournemouth, I think. And then we'll move on to Aston Villa and Everton. Aston Villa wins 4-0, and there was a theme here for Everton. It's kind of similar with Wolves, to be honest, where you know w- I kind of did it too as well because I looked at Everton last week and I saw they created 19 chances versus Fulham. Well, maybe eventually you can get some of those to go in, and I completely ignored where they are at the back. And we'll get to the goals. A center back pairing of Tarkowski and Michael Keane is a problem, a big problem, which we'll get to. So I mean they lose this goal 4-0. It could have been a lot worse. I mean the first goal from John McGinn, then Douglas Luiz with a PK, and then Leon Bailey, and then John Duran with two of these goals were just by throw-in mistakes, which is crazy. So I mean, this game could have been a lot worse. I mean, for Villa's sake, it's a good way to respond after losing your first game 5-1. But this was a lot of this is on Everton. Like their setup was weird. With Patterson, Keane, Tarkowski, and Young, and then Gaye is kind of like the lone kind of cover, and then you have Garner, Decore, Onana, and Iwobi in a line, and then Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I guess the idea is sometimes Onana and Decore are supposed to be there. Maybe Iwobi and Garner can kind of pitch in forward a little bit. But what was happening is Villa were really good at actually just completely stretching Everton. So maybe Garner and Iwobi would be next to Guy in the middle, where there would be nothing to get, nowhere to do anything. So that would allow, and Everton were playing a really, really deep, deep line. So that would allow, Digna and whoever the other fullback was, Cash, to just do whatever they wanted on the wing, just completely unmarked. And the reason why is so like way too often. Um, what happens here is you can't Everton space or Everton was set up to play defensively without the ball because Michael Keane and Tarkowski don't really have the legs. If anything is kicked over the top of them. And so Patterson and Young have to mark about that too, because otherwise, if Patterson and Young are caught, Tarkowski and Keane aren't going to be able to make recovery runs out wide. And Villa recognized this really early on, where too often uh, John McGinn and Musa Diaby were just kind of just getting into free areas, and they were getting into free areas after getting the ball out wide from Cash and Cash and Digna. And so I think there are small things, but in the right circumstances, this can become big. And what I wanted to kind of say here is their backlines are seriously exposed for lack of pace, and they have to play deeper than I think Dyche wants. So they can't really press to win the ball back higher up the pitch, and that further exposes the back line too. Because if you press, you have to play a high line. Otherwise, you create a gap between the midfield and defensive line to make it even bigger. And so that's where gaps I think appeared, where between Everton's back line for Villa to exploit. And keeping in mind, if Everton concede first in this kind of setup, and they have to chase a game, they're going to be a lot of trouble because any ball kicked over the top behind Tarkowski and Michael Keane or even Young, it'll be open season for those teams. And so there has to be personnel changes. I don't think Dyche can go a whole season playing this. And I didn't catch that last week.
and I should have, and this was just really, really, really bad. Uh, I don't have to touch on all the goals, but I mean, the first one comes from Douglas Luiz kind of passing the ball upfield to Musa Diaby, who's found a bit of space completely unmarked. And that's the reason why that's happened is Tarkowski and Michael Keane are really, really deep. They can't be next to the midfield line. And so, once you get past Diaby, I mean, once you get past Idrissa Gana Gueye, there was a lot of space to exploit to kind of, set up shop there. So Diaby kind of after Douglas Luiz is able to bypass someone, he hits the ball to Diaby, and then he passes that wide to Leon Bailey, who skates past Ashley Young. Leon Bailey retired Ashley Young in this game, and Ashley Young was on uh, Aston Villa last season, and he did a good job for them. But this one, it really did come back to haunt them. And from there, it's a simple cutback and then a nice kind of cross ball for John McGinn to put away. It's a clever worked goal for Villa, but everyone on Everton is ball watching, and it allows McGinn a free run to kind of make to the near post completely unmarked, and then with the PK, Villa make it 2-0 after Pickford kinda gets caught, bringing Watkins down in the box, but, it's another instance where Everton can't clear a corner kick, Villa recycle, and then Cash sends the ball in, and again, no one is marking anyone here. Leon Bailey wins the ball completely free, and then he heads it to Watkins, and Watkins does a really good job to stretch a leg out, to win the ball first, and then, Pickford kind of takes him out. Um, and then, that was I mean, Martinez did have to make a save to keep it 2-0. There was a nice little run by Danjuma when that happened, but, this game was only going to end one way. Another thing that happened early on was, Calvert-Lewin did start for them. So there is worth kind of saying that as well. Everton was set up to play with Calvert-Lewin, and that kind of backfired because, I think Doucouré sent the ball in, Calvert-Lewin was really brave to try to win it, to try to get a touch before Emi Martinez, like, clattered into him, and, no, Martinez gets there first, and, Calvert-Lewin kinda messes up his cheek, and you actually saw it swelling up during the game. So it's just more unluck for Everton and Calvert-Lewin 'cause, it's not he was fit and good to go this game and just it wasn't able to continue after that, and that really did hurt how Everton wanted to play. I mean, they were able to create a couple chances with Maupay in the second half, but yeah, I mean, so Martinez did have to make a couple saves, but this game was really, really poor, and it was poor because of how Everton was set up. They weren't able to really press and win the ball back. It seemed Villa were able to just kind of exploit any kind of space they wanted. Luke Digne had a lot of fun just kind of getting the ball versus his old team. As it's kind of funny. Aston Young played his old team, and Luca Digne played his own team, and it went better for Luca Digne because he had a couple really nice crosses into the box, completely free, unmarked, and it was rough, rough for Everton, and then it only got worse because, the 2 goals they gave up was, 2-0 that I guess that's respectable. You can kinda, reshape things, go next week, and then it got worse with 3-0 because Everton fall asleep on a throw-in. And it's not like a long throw-in, it's just, a ball's just kind of thrown into the box and it bounces, and, Michael Keane is just really late to react to it, and he tries to he has a weak clearance with it, and the nothing happens with it, and the ball just kind of falls to Diaby's feet, who beats it past Pickford. It's schoolyard defending by Michael Keane, and it's not the only chance. And there are a couple chances for Watkins to actually make this a lot worse than what it was. Um, and then the fourth goal came from John Duran. So Watkins subbed off. This John Duran comes on, and again, Everton now have a throw in themselves. And Ashley Young throws it to Michael Keane, and Duran just kind of Michael Keane just isn't ready for it and doesn't have the pace. Duran kind of gets it past Michael Keane, and then he's able to finish past Pickford. So it's could have been a lot worse. I mean, it was a good Sunday for Clareton Blue teams playing a Royal Blue team because West Ham beat Chelsea. Um, but yeah, it's a bit of a normal week for one team. Actually, a bit of a normal week for both teams because Villa back to being superior in nearly every respect, back to being the team maybe people were expecting. Though Everton were obviously not the team to try to exploit Villa's high line. To be fair, and then Everton back to just being outplayed all game. And I think just reminding everyone they still employ Michael Keane, and it's not really just to go at him. It's just not he's not immobile enough to be a center back at this level in a back four when you're also playing with Tarkowski, who's also has a lack for pace. Last year, maybe they had Yoramina, but he wasn't really able to go many games as well. Maybe Connor Cody would have been better, but they don't have him anymore. Someone like Braithwaite might have to be played over him. I don't really know because I think the idea is to try Seamus Coleman when he returns, and that's going to continue your problems. Just to have I don't know how you can play in this league with a slow back line because the way you can't really you have to be able to press and win the ball back. You can't just be in a block for an entire season. And right now, that was an issue. And when we get to Forest, in a similar respect, I thought Scott McKenna was equally as bad. Sometimes it can just be player personnel. I mean, Villa actually over three, Everton point six, Villa with five big missed chances or five big chances, with Watkins having the majority of it. I mean, it was a good rebound, and then Douglas Luiz and Kamar back to controlling games you expect, and then John McGinn did play a little bit better, not just for the goal. He had good ball retention. He was able to when being pressured, he was able to make some pretty good passes, good forward balls, but also make some good runs into the box as we saw. And then Musa Diaby is going to be a terror for Aston Villa this season. Heavily involved in the first goal and nearly scored a worldie of a screamer and a volley that nearly smacked the post. The only negatives are maybe Watkins not necessarily scoring, but he's getting close. He drew the PK, and he is getting close. So some ways to look at that. And then with Everton, you get Calvert Lewin starting, and it's not really it's not for lack of fitness or anything that you lose him for. So that can be something to say. Though if he's messed up his cheek, he might be out for a little bit again. On the optimistic side, if you can try that, they were able to create some chances to score in the second half. I thought Danjuma came on was bright for them at least. They did make Emma Martina work for that clean sheet. I do think Malpai has goals in him. I don't really know if that's going to be enough. I mean, if they can't work things out, they have 19-year-old Chimene from Sporting. Um, but that's really all I can try to say. I mean, they can't possess the ball. They're poor passing it. They have to sit deeper in defense anyways because the back line is slow, which again is kind of the issues. I mean, they're defending a ton, and they're also bad defending when they're in a block. Yeah, Tarkowski and Michael Keane is too risky to go a whole season with. So I don't really know what you can really do. Losing Yarmina on a free to Fiorentina seems like a mistake to not replace him, but that is what it is. I mean, because again, I focused last week on maybe they can score some goals. Maybe Calvert-Lewin gets back, and that'll help him out a bit. But it just the back line is rough, and it's Ashley Young as well. He didn't really do well. Nathan Patterson is a youngster. He has some pace to him, but it seems like he can get caught out of position, and just yeah, it's not going to be fun for Everton. I was wrong last week, and sometimes I don't really like to overreact. Sometimes I'm guilty of that. I think I'm making the right decision here. Because teams don't really go down for a lack of goals. They go down for being lazy to score on or being too easy to score on. And really in the last 2 years, you can argue that the reason why they've stayed up is because Pickford's been really good at saving that back line from embarrassment. I think he's been the second highest shot stopper for 2 years running. So you still have Pickford, so I guess there's something to say. But the squad is incomplete to me. They're missing Dwight McNeil. You can say so that's fair. They're going to have to rely on that 19-year-old Chimene, and they brought in Jack Harrison. Maybe that helps you a little bit. I do think they messed up not having someone like Ward-Prowse to at least help you with set pieces, but also be better in midfield. Because I thought that defensively they were a mess, but not just Ward-Prowse. You look at Southampton, and there are a number. I did this just kind of a fun experiment. Solisu, Lianco, Alvarez, Nathan Tella, Walker Peters, Smallbone, Stuart Armstrong, Che Adams, all are players that I think walk into this Everton team right now. And that's not just saying, oh, every team can just kind of, raid another team and just, pick all of their players. That doesn't work like that. But this is a team that just went down, and it's a team that's better than Everton roster wise right now. I think that is a problem, a significant problem. So maybe Dyche is able to work some magic. I'll have to see because that is going to be rough because they were able to get some shots versus was Fulham last week, but I don't know what that says about Fulham either. And so we'll move on to Fulham and Brentford and see how we're doing for time. Could be a lot worse, actually. Yeah, that is not good. And so Fulham and Brentford. Fulham and Brentford. This one goes Brentford's way 3-0 with Weissa and then Embremo with a PK and then Embremo again. And I think the PK was maybe harsh. I do think the red card was harsh on Tim Ream. And the PK gives Brentford, the second goal cushion that they wanted, and they honestly did. But they felt like they had control in the game from the start. To be honest, Fulham maybe edged them in possession, but aside from maybe a long distance to Decorday Reed strike that smacked the crossbar, it didn't feel like they threatened Brentford at all, and were horrible defending at the back. Just completely gifted away the first goal too. I thought the points were well deserved for Brentford, and then in Wesa and Embremo continued to star for them. To be honest, questions if they're enough, I think are fair, but at least it doesn't seem like that's an issue. Maybe Shada isn't necessarily doing enough, though he does have a big header to help get that PK for them to say as well. And then what's funny is Brentford. So we saw Brentford kind of do this last year, where against I guess bigger teams that they feel like are bigger clubs. They play with like kind of a 3-5-2 kind of shape, and then with clubs that I guess teams they see themselves as maybe equal, about more or less equal competition. They go with three attackers. They play 4-3-3. So I think that's kind of funny. Sometimes I guess that's just kind of a one way of seeing if Frank respects your club or not. I don't know, but it's worked. It's worked out for them. And I think another thing to say is Nathan Collins has come in and stepped up, pretty big for them. Brentford did concede 2 goals versus Fulham, but to be fair, it was not necessarily the defensive errors. They let someone get the better of them on a set piece goal last week, and then the keeper was beaten on a shot. But I think I saw that the XG conceded for the first 2 games. Brentford at number 3 for best. So Collins has come in. And Collins and Pickford have been a pretty good partnership. You imagine when me gets back, then maybe we'll have some competition with Collins, or at least maybe when you play in a 3, you'll be able to insert me and Collins as well. So Collins has been a good pickup for them, um, as we're saying as well. And then so I mean the it wasn't really a ton of chances. I mean, what's funny enough is Wisa did actually have a chance to score right before he did score. So I mean, it's a short corner kick. The only reason to highlight this is it's a really good slip ball by Janelt. I thought he had a pretty good game. Um, he can sometimes be a little missed, but he had a couple really nice slip passes that created some things. And he created one here. Mbeumo was able to kind of separate himself, and he does well to get a dangerous cross that screams across the 6 yard area where Wisa tries a cheeky back heel, and this is going in. I think A.T. Robinson just kind of clears it off the line. But to get to the goal, it's scored by Wisa, and it's just a horrible giveaway by Fulham, just completely switching off. It's a poor weak pass by Diop, and just gives the ball away to Wisa, who's able to dribble past Leno and then slots it in the empty net. Um, and two goals in 2 games for Wisa. The only Fulham chance was the Bobby Reed chance that I mentioned, and then we get to the second goal. Well, there was another chance for Wisa, I guess. So it's another pass by Janelt. Plays a really nice forward with the ball, and he weeds and Bremer kind of getting a step on Robinson. He plays the ball over the top for him to run onto, and then Bremer squares the ball across the 6 yard area, and it just kind of misses Wisa. But it's again, and then Jensen tries a volley, but we get to the PK, and it's maybe 2 for 2 now for Bremer. So who needs Ivan Tony? But Tim Ream is unlucky here. Both for the foul called and for it being a second yellow card and being sent off. But he does take a risk here, to be fair. And it's 5 games this week that a player was sent off. But and Shota didn't have his best game, but he was big here. He wins the key header, and Weiss is able to lead. That leads to the PK bin draw. And then the third goal happens kind of in extra time, kind of like late. Ayers come on as a sub and has a good run upfield. He then passes it on the right wing to Rico Henry, who's their left back. And I think they maybe switched because Adama Traore was on the other side, and Henry was playing with a yellow, but the other fullback was playing with the yellow too. So I don't know. But Henry does a really good job on the other side of the field to square the ball in the 6 yard area. And again, Brentford were feasting on this. And yeah, it kind of similar to what I said with Everton. Fulham were really easy to play through in this game as well. So and Everton were able to play through Fulham last week as well. So a lot of fears for Fulham. You're going to get Paulinho back. That'll help you a little bit in midfield. That's not necessarily going to help you in this respect, where it's really easy to get the ball in wide, just cross cut back crosses, against that 6 yard area. So I think it was a pretty big game for both teams, to be honest. The fixture has kind of turned into a bit of a rivalry. sits their sides in the championship time in the championship together. So reassurances for Brentford, maybe that the attack is okay, and maybe more reasons for doubt for Fulham fans because back-to-back games where I don't really think they performed well. Um, and so, I mean, Fulham with only 10 shots and two on target. Or Fulham, yeah, Fulham 10 shots and two on target. Brentford 17 shots and eight on target. Brentford had almost four XG. Fulham point 0.4. Fulham did etch them in possession, and Fulham did etch them in passing. But the Brentford takes is Wisa and Embremo continue to do well in Tony's absence, and just the only issue is maybe you're missing Tony's aerial ability and maybe his hold up play, but they're making it up with really clever time runs into the box, and Embremo's doing a really good job to run into channels. Norgard and Jensen continue to be a pretty good partnership when they play together in midfield, and Janelt was able to offer some nice moments in this game. We know De Silva can come on and offer something from the bench as well. And then Nathan Collins that I mentioned. And if Flecken can pan out, Brentford maybe do have a stout defensive team. We'll have to see about that. That is an if, but through the two games that has been good. And yeah, with Brentford, maybe Shada. I kind of did kind of put this kind of a takeaway in. It's maybe reaching a little bit, but it does feel like maybe they could try to look to bring someone else in, someone that can also be kind of clever on the ball. That because it does seem like Shada is a little one trick minded at the moment. Maybe he works out. They do have Lewis Potter as well. There's a guy in Antonio Nusa that has been really flying for Club Brugge. And the only reason I bring this up is they were linked to Mudryk last year before the Champions League started, and Mudryk hasn't had the best go at Chelsea. But the other thing to say is maybe if he had joined Brentford, it would have been had less expectations on him, and he would have been playing with a side that plays a little bit more on the counter. Maybe it would have worked out better had Mudryk actually made that move. Again, I don't wages again come into effect here. But I wonder if they would try to take a shot on someone like this, an 18-year-old who he's just risky taking a shot on an 18-year-old, but also risky a lot of potential to benefit here as well. This is something Brighton would do. So it feels like Brentford have been short in one player that offers something similar that Embremo has. This guy has that. This guy is a lot of fun with the ball at his feet. He can be creative. He can lead to goals. He's quick. Um, got some wiggle with him, and it just he is. I don't know. I don't think he's even been linked or anything. I just kind of wanted to share that. And then with Fulham, what's weird is Mitrovic helped you out last week from the bench, and then you find out that he actually has left to join a club in Saudi Arabia, and that's a problem because well, he was the reason why they got the 3 points last week versus Everton. Yeah, he had a big role in the goal. And the maybe a positive is you already have Raul Jimenez, you've signed Adama Traore, and maybe the idea is to create that partnership that worked pretty well for Wolves a few seasons ago. I don't that's maybe kind of grasping at straws here because Diop kind of gifts the game away. Maybe when you get Tosin back for fitness, he'll play over him, and you won't have Ream next game. So I don't really know what the idea is to play with. Maybe you try Calvin Bassey. But that's yeah, it's not the best start for Fulham in the league. You can definitely say that. Uh, and another thing that's kind of worth saying is they've allowed a high XG against them because Brentford were nearly four and Everton was over two last week as well. So the defense is definitely worrying. And that was with Tim Raymond. You're going to be without him. But another thing that kind of spells worry is you lost your main goal scorer in Mitrovic, and can Jimenez kind of fit that role? We'll have to see. And then we'll finally end with Nottingham and Sheffield United. This game ends 2-1 with goals from Awani. Kind of early start. You thought maybe Forest were going to walk away with it, and then Gustav Hammer gets a goal to get Forest back into it, or get Sheffield back into it. And this was a fantastic goal. I can't really tell if Turner is being got at here because Saka was able to do something similar, but it's still a fantastic strike. Outside the box after a corner kick, and then Chris Wood is able to win it at the very end. And to be honest, it felt like a 6 pointer. Arini gets the start and gets the rewards, and then it rewards Cooper for that, and then Chris Wood comes on and actually rewards him too. But this game felt like both teams that know this is their competition to go down or stay up, or maybe basically both go down because usually when a team gets an opening goal like this, you expect them to kind of have control in the game a little bit. And weirdly enough, it felt like Forest weren't comfortable having the lead, weirdly enough, and they started to just kind of give the ball away really, really cheaply. And yeah, it was a weird game because after about like the 20th or 30th minute, you could tell that actually Sheffield were back in this. And then another thing that happened in the second half was we saw someone like Larouche come on for Sheffield, and he actually helps them create a couple moments for them. So it happens really on. So, like, this only leads to a corner, and I think they actually end up scoring on this, on the corner later. But, there's a ball kind of whipped in, and Forest have to get the block out to prevent, the effort. But, Larouche comes on and makes a run, and it draws 2 Forest players to follow him, and that leaves, Traore, really wide open to receive the ball and sends a dangerous cross that, Ahmedamahech, I think that's nearly connects on. He's a defender too, so it was weird to see how often he got into the box. Uh, and then you get to the goal by Harmer. It's a fantastic strike, but I do wonder if maybe Turner can get this. But Forest played scared and started really sloppy with the ball after they got in the goal, and it allowed Sheffield to kind of get back into it. And another thing that was weird is it looked like, someone like Danilo was getting the ball and he was immediately looking to go sideways or backwards, when maybe, there was space, to do something else. And, immediately Sheffield kind of recognized that, and that allowed Sheffield to almost, they wanted, Forrest to go backwards. They wanted Forrest to play safe. And, anytime it would go to Turner, maybe he'd hit it long. And it was allowing Sheffield to just, again, stay in the game. The Forest weren't really able to break them down, and it was weird. It was weird how sloppy they were in possession. Then they have a couple chances by Sheffield. There's a chance by Souza who made his debut. A couple guys made a debut for Sheffield, and this midfielder Souza had a long shot, and this one goes just wide. And earlier he had a shot that forced Turner into a pretty good save. Turner ended up catching it, but the reason to touch on this is McKenna made a couple mistakes here, and he makes a mistake again, and it allows Sheffield a chance to kind of just keep the ball in the Forest end, and a shot comes from it. And just, yeah, Danilo and McKenna had really poor games. And then, Wani scores, and it looks like, Johnson kind of plays him a slip ball, but it's offsides. And then, Forrest were maybe unlucky not to get a PK after Larucci kind of took out Serge Aurier. Um, and then really this is where the game changed. There was a chance where looked like Sheffield were in on goal, 1v1 after a really horrid mistake by Joe Worrell and McKenna, just make a real mess of a ball over the top. And Turner has to make a big 1v1 save and does. But another thing too is Troy can do anything he wants here, and instead he makes the angle more awkward for him than it needs to be because he cuts outside to his right as opposed to make just running down the middle, and so that allows Turner to get his angle right, and he gets a good hand to it. And that would this is where the game changes. That was a chance for Sheffield to go up, win the game, and Forrest ended up that didn't happen, and Forrest brought on Chris Wood and Anthony Alenga, and they ended up winning because of that. I mean, and it comes from another Serge Aurier cross, a really good delivery. So I mean, it's a ball that finds Chris Wood's head, and Wood's able to direct it into the far side of the net. And it's an underrated skill to be able to send it in good quality service into the box. It allows you to stretch the pitch out a little bit more. And Forrest had caught having to deal with three of these crosses in the sequence. First from Anthony Alanga, who got down wide again, sent in a good ball, and then Brendan Johnson had a chance to fire something in. And then finally, Aurier got his turn, and it's his one that ends up working best. But Alanga, Wood, and even Ryan Yates coming on in the second half made a big difference in the game for Forest. Ryan Yates were just able to. It seemed like he was much better in possession. He was able to move the ball a little bit better than what they were doing with Danilo. So it did feel like two teams that could maybe go down together because maybe things will be far better for Forest when someone like Felipe gets back, but McKenna needs to be Ben, just like Michael Keane. McKenna was really really poor, and you don't have Navas anymore. Maybe Navas does better on the chance that they score on. I mean, Turner did have a fantastic 1v1 save at the very end. To be fair to him, and it looks like there may be links to Monaco's Yusuf Fofana, which is crazy because I've mentioned him for Liverpool. And they get that they immediately improves their midfield. So we'll have to watch about that. And it was good by Chris Wood. So it's weird uh, Steve Cooper played for Arsenal last week, and he started Brendan Johnson as striker. And this week he plays Awani, and he gets rewarded with that. And then he brings on Chris Wood, and he gets rewarded with that. He played two strikers and got rewarded with the two goals. And that really is it. That's where the game changed. I mean, Nottingham Forest with 16 shots and 4 on target. Sheffield was 7 and 3, which isn't necessarily great, but possession was 50-50, which is again not really what I would expect, especially after you get the early goal. And so with Nottingham side, I think there are some positives. Is Ryan Yates, Wood, and Alenga coming on as bench subs. And they do have some decent attacking players. Just that can create and score some goals for them. Just in the midfield needs to get them the ball more. And Awani, Gibbs White, Alanga, Brennan Johnson, if they can keep hold to him. With Chris Wood showed something here, and then Aurier and Nico Williams do have good delivery service, obviously. And then I have the note that Ryan Yates changes the game. Coming on, he was better in possession, just so would help out some win some second balls also. But it seemed like his distribution was much better. When he was going long, the passes were finding players, and just seemed he offered a little bit more security, a little bit. And for negatives, McKenna obviously, but it just felt it was weird to see them so uncomfortable with the lead. And so it is that Forest are basically probably what you would expect from them. With Sheffield, I don't necessarily know if that's the same. So I mean, the new signings did well for them. I mean, Gustav Harmer had a fantastic debut and was Player of the Year for maybe Coventry City last year. Well, him and Gilchrist, I guess. And I think he did well. I think he did score in the playoff final. And he almost got into the Premier League by with Coventry City, and that didn't necessarily work. So Sheffield signed him, and what a debut and what a goal! And Vinicius Souza played well for them. And then just some negatives. I do think it's much better to be competitive in this game, but it is the kind of result that can send you down. Unfortunately, it does feel like it's a 6 pointer, and the game was even, and you come away with nothing. And the schedule isn't kind for them as well. I think I saw that it's a murder's row. They have City next. It's a bunch of like top teams. So you've already started off not necessarily in the best light, and then you've got a September. I think is really rough for them to get wins. So they're not gonna have a way to build some momentum, especially and they had a chance with Benny Traore just makes that 1v1. They maybe win this game. So it's just kind of the margins, and that's where it is. And then no Luton Town and Burnley this weekend. Luton Town apparently their stadium isn't ready to host games yet. But with that, I think they host Chelsea, or maybe Chelsea. They play Chelsea this Friday, so we'll get to see Luton Town this coming week. And then that's it. Liverpool play Newcastle this week, so I'll either be in a happy state or be really really depressed. We'll see. We'll see how Newcastle bounces back from playing City pretty well, but also kind of getting a little bit of a wake up call, and that'll be it. So I probably did go long again, but that is the show. Thank you for tuning in, and for I guess me at the reserve squad. You stay squatting and stop recording.